On national television, President Jang Won-taek appears and says he has a request to make. He asks for everyone to get as many people as possible to watch his broadcast. With that, the message spreads, and everyone starts yelling for their neighbors to turn on their TVs. The viewership explodes in less than a minute, and the president thanks everyone for their cooperation. Then he declares a state of emergency and martial law for 5 p.m. on July 16th and announces that the army has already taken control of everything. He explains he did all this so they could have a dignified end, as everyone should know by now what's coming. He then reveals that the scenario from the game, Survival Life, is happening in reality, and that the asteroid from the game is on its way. After that, he reveals that the US military tried to intercept the asteroid, but the mission was a complete failure. As a result, the asteroid ended up crashing into the sea near Okinawa. The impact was so powerful it caused a massive explosion and catastrophic damage. The president then reveals that, unfortunately, the people of Japan are turning into zombies, and that this is happening because of the spores coming from that asteroid. The politician then states that this is an unavoidable situation, and that no one can escape it. According to him, some people have already awakened powers, and they won't turn into zombies. With this in mind, the government has prepared safe shelters, but they will only open in 1 year. In addition, information about the monsters will be dropped from the sky in pamphlets for everyone. The minister will also shut down all nuclear power plants for the safety of the survivors. In the end, he says his goodbyes and prays that the largest number of people can survive. He also thanks the anonymous person who warned them about the apocalypse and its exact date. On the other side of the screen, our protagonist turns off the television and says the moment has finally arrived. With his gear already prepared, he affirms that now he needs to survive, and he reveals himself as the last player of the apocalyptic world from the survival game. The story then flashes back a few months to a game where a group is facing a horde of zombies. One of the players, named Puraketsu, is worried because if they lose again, it will be the third time in a row. His partner, Yusuhaim, dressed as a bunny, replies that they need to avoid that at all costs. A third player in a kitten outfit scoffs, saying the two of them always charge in without a strategy. At this, a fourth member named Noramaki agrees, but admits the duo is pretty strong. Annoyed, the pair argues with their teammate, who offers them a 1-minute head start to prove him wrong. With those words, Yusuhaim gets furious and prepares to show them they're mistaken. The name of this game is Survival Life, and this virtual reality game, also called Suare, is about an apocalypse. Its theme mixes zombies with various fantasy monsters. The game had such an absurd difficulty that it made even the most experienced players tremble. Because of this, the game blew up at launch and broke all records for concurrent players. But its popularity dropped just as fast as it rose, and it was forgotten. And after a year, only 4 people were still playing. In the end, it became known as a trash game for being way too hard. After a long battle, the 4 of them regroup and complain that they lost again, and that the game is getting super boring. Puraketsu and the kitten player agree that it wouldn't be weird if the game just ended right there. Yusuhaim is also incredibly bored and wishes for a little excitement in his life. One of them asks if they want to play something else, but the bunny man says this is the only game he plays. At that moment, Noramaki gets everyone's attention and shows a screen to his friends. A message pops up in the chat, and a new player asks if anyone is online on the server. The whole group gets super excited about a 5th player joining them. The newbie thanks them for the help and says he'll talk to them again after finishing the tutorial. But 2 hours later, the guy comes back saying the tutorial is way too hard, and that he's going to quit. The kitten player gets furious and kicks a zombie's head, screaming that the game is done for. Yusuhaim just hopes the difficulty gets adjusted in the next update, but his friend doesn't believe it. He then decides that's enough for today, and is going to stop playing. With that, the kitten player says goodbye to her companion and wishes him a good day at work. Our protagonist then gets worried and asks if he'll be back to play tomorrow, and he just replies with a maybe. The duo Yusuhaim and Puraketsu also realize that the strange mood was a sign of goodbye. They then log off, saying they're returning to reality because their journey has come to an end. But our hero refused to believe it and kept playing even when everyone else stopped logging in. He kept playing alone, live stream in the hope that his friends would come back. Several months later, the game received a major update, and the difficulty was lowered. In addition to the existing monsters and zombies, stronger and enhanced ones appeared in the game. Even with this radical change, his friends didn't return, and the game was left with only 1 player. Tired of it all, our boy shouts that he's quitting this crappy game once and for all. But at that exact moment, a message announces that the game's service will end in 1 week. A giant boss appears, and the archer laments because he really wanted to defeat that monster with his friends. Fed up with everything, he ends the recording and finally takes off his virtual reality glasses. Our hero deletes his streaming accounts after 5,500 hours of gameplay, but he keeps the hard drives with the memories and decides to focus on real life as Take It Tsukiyama. 3 months later, we see the young man man working at his Korean food restaurant. The reason for his player name, Norimaki, was pretty simple and related to his profession. He chose that name because he owns a restaurant that serves typical Korean dishes. His shop is small, but business is good, and it's on the first floor of his house. Our protagonist inherited the house from his parents when he was in high school. Handing a dish to a customer, she excitedly calls him by his name, Tsukiyama. This is Hoshi-san, a regular customer who compliments his restaurant's good business. She works at a nearby beauty salon and is a very beautiful and attractive woman. The woman then gets closer and shows Tega something on her phone, making him curious. She shows him an internet post where people are saying a status window is appearing. She mentioned she tried it earlier, but unfortunately, nothing happened for her. Our boy starts laughing and says she's funny for believing in such things, but out of curiosity, he yells, "Status window," and a blue light appears in front of him. Back in his room, our boy sits in silence, processing what just happened. He still doubts that something like this could be possible, but unexpectedly, a glowing status window appears right in front of him. Our protagonist's jaw drops because the status window actually appeared. He sees his attributes and a unique characteristic, but feels like he's seen that screen somewhere before. Suddenly, he remembers the game's survival life and realizes the status window is identical to the one in the game. But he remembers that the original game didn't have a special characteristics system. The window explains that to use the ability, he needs to say a command that our hero finds kind of silly, even though he finds it weird. He says the magic words, and a blue energy starts to form on the floor. The energy then condenses and creates a glowing vortex that spins faster and faster. Soon after, a portal opens, and our boy is amazed because it's just like the entrance to the game's labyrinth. Panicking, he puts his hands on his head and yells that this is exactly like the game's Sura. Our protagonist starts to break out in a cold sweat, refusing to believe this is possible. To be sure, he grabs his phone, thinking that if this is all real, there must be news about Mozambique. And to his astonishment, he finds a NASA news report about an asteroid approaching Earth. Our hero panics but tries to calm himself down, saying it's too early to jump to conclusions. He looks at the news again and wonders if all this is really connected to the game's Sura. To get some clue about what's happening, he approaches the blue portal. Then, our protagonist decides he has no choice but to go in and investigate. A black screen appears, showing that there are only 32 days left until the end of the world. To get a hint, he approaches the portal and decides he needs to check what's inside. But at the last second, our boy chickens out and pulls his hand back, afraid of the unknown. Our hero thinks it over and concludes that jumping in headfirst would be incredibly reckless. He then rethinks his approach to check what's on the other side of the dimensional portal. With that, he grabs a ladle from his kitchen and carefully puts it inside the blue portal. The ladle comes back with a bit of dirt on it, and he realizes the other side isn't a labyrinth. After confirming it wasn't a labyrinth, he grabs a backpack, preparing for the journey. Already geared up, he stands in front of the portal and wonders if he should really go in. Our protagonist is shocked because on the other side of the portal, he finds a beautiful forest. He looks at the scenery in awe, wondering if this is all a dream. Our protagonist explores the forest and notices a strange blue bird while feeling a bit chilly. He then pulls out his phone to check but realizes he has no signal and thinks he must be in a remote place. To avoid getting lost, he decides to mark the trees along the way while looking for any clues. Walking along the trail, our hero starts to wonder about the size of this forest. Already exhausted, he wipes the sweat from his face and complains that the hike is pretty tough. Tired of walking, he was just wishing for something to appear when a shadowy creature suddenly emerges from the bushes. All of a sudden, red beams are fired in his direction, and our boy dives to the ground to dodge. A white deer appears, and a system window identifies it, making the guy wonder if he's even on Earth. The animal stares at our protagonist with a very serious and intense gaze, looking ready to attack, but to his surprise, the creature just turns its back and runs off, leaving our hero alone. Relieved, he takes a deep breath and admits the white deer really managed to scare him. He remembers monsters from the game, but says he's never seen a deer like that while playing Sura. With that, he pulls out his knife and tries to calm down because, deep down, he already knew what was happening. The guy already suspected this place was related to the game, but refused to accept it. He then wields the knife and thinks that if it's true, all of humanity is about to face a terrible disaster. But unfortunately for our hero, the proof he dreaded so much didn't take long to appear. Suddenly, a tree with a sun apple appears in front of him, confirming his worst suspicions. Our protagonist then picks the golden fruit and wonders if he can really eat it. He takes a bite, and a system window informs him that his stamina has been slightly restored. An aura surrounds him, and he realizes the effect is the same as the juice sold in the Sura item shop. Shocked by the situation, he sits on the ground and says he has no choice but to accept it. To make matters worse, he finds goblin droppings on the ground, which only confirms everything. Our boy then falls into despair and, with his hands on his head, tries to accept the harsh reality. With a determined look, he finally understands that the end of the world is very close. Back in his room, the guy immediately starts preparing after coming out of the portal. The first thing he does is rewatch his old videos to remember the world of Cura. He reads his notes and sees that there are 30 days left until the Mozambique asteroid hits Earth. Our protagonist realizes that no matter how many times he reviews the game, there are no good explanations. The worst part is the Iron Death disease, a phenomenon that simply corrodes all metals. It happens 5 hours after the spores arrive and can take up to a year to stabilize, but the Iron Death disease isn't a major threat to our protagonist because of his gait. With that, our boy buys weapons, food, and other essential items for his survival. Soon after, he enters a forum where awakened people are discussing their new powers. Then, the next morning, our hero goes to the supermarket to buy even more supplies. On his way home, he picks up a 60-pound hunting bow he bought from a second-hand website. The seller says goodbye, and he starts to think that maybe he's overdoing it with the preparations. But he figures that if he's wrong, he can just make the money back in a few years. Arriving home, our protagonist puts a closed sign on his shop to focus on his prep. He stands in front of his shop with a tired but very determined expression. He sighs, wondering why this had to happen, but Hoshi-san suddenly calls out to him. The woman asks if he's closing the shop, but the guy lies, saying he's just doing some renovations. She's happy to hear that and says the renovation will attract more customers, and our hero agrees. He says he needs to go because he has things to do, but the girl seems to want to say something important, and Hoshi-san gives up and tells him to forget it, thinking that maybe she'll manage it next time. As she walks away, our protagonist wonders what she wanted to say. Our boy thinks he could have asked what she wanted, but he decided not to. He intentionally stayed quiet because he had much more important things to deal with now. With that in mind, our hero opens the dimensional gate again because his mission was about to begin. His playstyle was to be a strategist who planned detailed tactics for the team. Because of this, his close combat stats were low compared to his friends. In Cura, you couldn't just increase attributes as you pleased, so he needed to train for real. Our protagonist is unsure if he can do it, but when he holds the bow, he notices something different. He can draw the string with ease and believes that if he aims well, he'll hit the target. The guy watches a video to learn, and the instructor on the screen seems to be encouraging him to shoot. Our hero then gets into position and readies the arrow on the bow, aiming very carefully. He extends his arm and pulls the string with all his might, concentrating on his target. In his mind, he merges with his old game avatar, channeling all his experience. The arrow hits the target dead on with incredible precision, and the guy is super satisfied. Our boy looks at his hands and thinks that maybe he's better at this than cooking, but he can only shoot 5 times, so he decides to start training from that day on. After finishing the basic preparations, our hero moves on to the next phase of his plan. He has 2 things to do now. First is to confirm if he can defeat monsters in his current state. The second task is to prepare a safe hideout to store all his essential supplies. He'll keep doing this until the weapons and supplies he ordered finally arrive. Our boy isn't thinking about reckless actions and finds a good sun apple to eat. His cautious playstyle was exactly what made him survive until the end in the world of Cura. Following his intuition, our protagonist looks for something he believes is nearby. At that moment, his eyes widen as he finally finds what he was searching for in the forest. On the ground, he finds a trail of goblin droppings, confirming the creature's presence in the area. The reason he was looking for this is that goblins live in groups, and a solitary trail is very strange. Analyzing the trail, he deduces that the goblin hasn't been eating well and was kicked out of its group. Our hero then decides he needs to find this monster to test his new abilities. Suddenly, he hears a wolf's howl and realizes this is the perfect chance to finally act. This means there's a canyon nearby where he'll probably find drinkable water. Hiding behind a tree, he finally spots the goblin drinking water from a small stream. Our protagonist finds the creature disgusting and realizes it's identical to the one in the game. A system window displays information about the monster, which uses spears and poison needles. That's why he chose a bow to attack from a distance, since goblins like to paralyze their victims. With the bow in hand, our hero takes a deep breath and tries to calm down before taking the first shot. He notices it's an old goblin, and because it was kicked out of the tribe, it has no weapons or poison. Confident in his aim, he draws the bowstring, and a bluish energy envelops the arrowhead. The goblin turns its head at the last second and senses the imminent danger coming its way. The arrow hits the creature squarely in the shoulder, which lets out a sharp cry of pain and agony. Even though he missed the head, he prepares to shoot again, but the creature isn't going to make it easy. The monster then yanks the arrow out of its shoulder and charges at our boy, who curses in anger. With his knife in hand, our protagonist prepares for close combat against the furious goblin. The two's weapons then clash in a violent impact, creating sparks in the middle of the forest. Seizing an opening, our hero dodges the attack and prepares for a quick counter-attack. With an agile movement, he manages to land a precise cut right on the green monster's face, but the creature retaliates with a strong blow, hitting our protagonist, who screams in pain from the impact. Furious from the hit, our hero clenches his teeth and prepares to return the monster's attack. He then manages to narrowly dodge and plunges his knife knife with full force into the green creature's chest. With a quick movement, our boy throws the goblin to the ground and prepares to finish the fight. Taga then drives the blade in hard, and the creature lets out its last scream before finally falling. But what he didn't know was that a mysterious creature was watching everything from afar with its red eyes. Exhausted, our protagonist sits on the ground and celebrates the victory, gaining 2 experience points. Suddenly, a small glowing pouch appears on the ground as a reward for defeating the monster. Inside, our hero finds items to create an ointment and decides to try making it later. But first, he decides to bury the body so the other goblins don't find it there. Our boy also knows that if he leaves the body there, it could turn into a bone monster. After finishing the job, he goes to the river and finds some red trout swimming in the water. Upon seeing the fish, our protagonist is shocked as he remembers something very important from the game. He realizes that if his suspicion is correct, that place is far more dangerous than it seemed. At that exact moment, a giant red eye appears in the darkness, watching his every move. An Olbeer monster appears in front of him, and our hero realizes his life might end right there. A screen then informs him that there are only 31 days left until the end of the world. The scene flashes back to one of the live streams our hero used to do for his few fans. He says that today, he's going to talk about the forest monsters, but the chat calls him boring. Even so, the guy continues because he had prepared special material for that stream. Suddenly, a fan named Kragaby-kun donates 500 yen, and our hero thanks him for the support. The follower says he worked hard in the rain to donate, and the streamer gets quite emotional about the gesture. With that, he recalls that he already talked about goblins and other creatures in the last stream. He warns that the most dangerous ones in the forest are werewolves and Olbeers. Our protagonist explains that the presence of an Olbeer means something very important. It means the ecosystem of the place is balanced, and he misses those times. We see a brief description of his 3 most loyal fans, who always watched his live streams. He then prepares to finally reveal the strategy to defeat the Olbeers. Back in the present, our boy wonders why he remembered that just at that moment, the monster approaches, and he thinks of this as his life flashing before his eyes. But our hero refuses to give up and says he can't go down in a place like this. With that, he focuses and tries to think of a way to survive the giant monster. Our hero remembers that Olbeers destroy everything when they're hungry, but this one is just standing there. Then he realizes the creature isn't hungry, and the reason for its anger is something else. Our boy then understands that the monster got furious because he invaded its territory. To escape this situation, he has only one option and grabs his flashlight with determination. The guy then takes a step forward, preparing to execute his risky plan. His mind is that of the player Norimaki, but his body is still that of a simple cook. But he has no choice because if he does nothing, he will definitely meet his end right there. With a battle cry, our protagonist challenges the giant creature to combat. The Olbeer stares at him with its glowing red eyes, ready for the imminent attack. Our hero knows they see well at night, but in contrast, are weak against light. He remembers all the attack patterns from the game and knows he only has one shot. Focused, he dodges the creature's attack with a quick and calculated movement. To maximize the effect of the light, our boy runs behind the giant monster. With an agile move, he points the flashlight directly into the creature's eyes to blind it. The creature screams in pain from the bright light, and our hero seizes the chance to flee the scene. He keeps the flashlight steady and exploits the monster's weakness to escape with his life. Suddenly, our protagonist wakes up startled in his room and realizes it was all a dream. He then gets out of bed and complains that his whole body is aching after that night. Even though he slept a lot, he turns off the alarm and notices the exhaustion hasn't gone away. Then the guy remembers he fought a goblin and an Olbeer and never wants to see that again. His stomach rumbles, and he realizes he hasn't eaten anything since yesterday afternoon. With that, our boy collapses to the floor because his legs have no strength due to hunger. At that moment, he sees smoke coming from his backpack and finds the sun apple inside. With his last bit of strength, our hero grabs the golden fruit he brought from the other world. A golden aura envelopes him, and he feels his stamina being restored. Feeling alive again, now recovered, our protagonist decides the next thing to do is get something to eat. But when he gets to his restaurant, he runs into Hoshi-san and wonders what she's doing there. The woman smiles and says she obviously came to eat because this is her favorite restaurant. He asks why at the same table, and she replies that eating together is much more fun. The woman then asks if he has tried using that, and our hero questions if she's talking about the status window. She confirms, super excited, and our protagonist understands why she stopped talking last time. With that, she shows him her phone and says the rumors about the awakened seem to be true. The news talks about a robbery, and our boy thinks she's either naive or a terrible liar. He realizes her intentions are obvious and lies, saying he hasn't awakened any powers. Our protagonist thinks he can't tell the truth because his dimensional gate isn't for combat. It's an ability that shows its true value when he's alone, not in a group. Besides, he knows that revealing his powers in an apocalyptic world is a terrible idea. Doing something like that would be like asking to be targeted, and he can't take that risk right now. He thinks that, if she's asking about awakening, it's because she must have awakened herself. Suddenly, Hoshi-san apologizes and confesses that she lied to our protagonist. Our hero thinks she's a good person and tells her she doesn't have to say anything now, she doesn't want to. He says there's still time, and that she can tell him when she feels ready. Shortly after, he says goodbye, and sees that the delivery guy has arrived with the items he bought online. Our boy then thanks the delivery guy for his work, and receives his packages for the apocalypse. He takes the things he'll use later to the roof, and the ones he'll use now to the second floor. Next, the guy opens one of the boxes, and takes out only the items for today's operation. We see a gas mask, a fireproof suit, defense spray, and an axe. Today's mission is to find a place that can become his new safe hideout. With that, our hero gets ready and enters the dimensional portal to start his mission. Once on the other side, our boy finds a good spot for his new base pretty quickly. He remembers a place that caught his eye when he was hunting goblins. With that, our protagonist hides in the bushes to observe the location from a distance. The cave he found seems to be the perfect place for a secure hideout, but the only problem is finding out what kind of monsters live inside that cave. With his telescope, our hero observes the entrance and notices some strange footprints in the sand. He realizes they are kobold tracks and is shocked by the unexpected discovery. Our boy then smiles and says this is something to celebrate because he got really lucky. The plan he came up with works on all low-class monsters, so he checks the wind, but his tactic is especially effective against kobolds, who are nocturnal and sleep during the day. Taking advantage of the fact that the monsters were sleeping, our hero gathers some thin branches from the forest. With the branches in hand, he carefully places them at the cave entrance for his trap. Next, he takes the gasoline he brought and pours it all over the wood he gathered. But just as he was about to light the fire, our boy hears a strange noise coming from the cave. As luck would have it, two sleepy kobolds emerge from the cave and catch him in the middle of his plan. The creatures look at him with a confused expression, not understanding what's going on. Our protagonist feels awkward and tries to greet the monsters to hide his nervousness, but without wasting any time, he grabs his fire axe and prepares for combat. The guy then charges full speed at the two creatures, who still seemed confused. With a spinning blow, he hits the creatures squarely, sending them to the ground. Our boy then wonders if drowsiness counts as a negative status effect. Even in his current state, he defeated them with a single blow and leveled up to level 1, but with no time to lose, he throws the lighter onto the wood before the others wake up. The fire then starts to burn, and smoke enters the cave because the monsters have a weakness. Their weakness is that they are terrible at dealing with unexpected events and panic easily. Our hero thinks that burning the monsters would be faster, but he doesn't want to clean up the mess afterward. Besides, the cleanup would be a pain, so he wants to avoid that kind of work at all costs. That's why the plan our protagonist came up with is much smarter and will be far more efficient. The idea is to weaken all the monsters while they are confused by the smoke from the fire. With the smoke, he will lure the creatures out of the cave, so he can fight with more space. After that, he intends to finish them all at once and remembers that kobolds travel in groups of 7. Having already defeated 2, he counts the ones that came out and realizes there are still 3 missing from the full group. With that, our boy puts on his gas mask and attacks one of the monsters with his axe. Seeing their friend fall, the other kobolds scream furiously and charge at him with everything they've got, but our protagonist isn't fazed and prepares for combat against the rest of the group. With a powerful blow, our hero hits the enemy squarely, taking advantage of their confusion. One of the creatures manages to dodge the attack and lunges at our boy with its claws, but the guy is faster and uses his defense spray to blind the monster mid-attack. The creature then screams in pain as the spray burns its eyes, leaving it completely vulnerable. Our boy approaches the last monster and realizes it's the leader of the pack. Seeing the scared monster, our hero tells it not to worry because he'll end its suffering. With that, he thanks it for the Hideout and finishes the creature with a precise blow from his axe. After the fight, our protagonist sits down exhausted and says everything went well, but he's out of stamina. He then sees that his attributes have decreased because, in Sura, fatigue affects a player's performance. But leveling up is essential to unlock the shop, so he doesn't think it was a waste. Besides, having a safe place in the other world is the most important thing he could get. With a smile on his face, our boy celebrates because his mission was a total success. But now he needs to clean up the mess and prepares for the most boring part of the mission, the cleanup. With his Hideout secured, our protagonist starts cleaning up all the filth in the cave. The cave is about 15 meters deep, which is a bit small for an ideal shelter. He complains that kobolds are disgusting, and that cleaning everything up seems harder than the fight, but now with a safe place, he can open his dimensional gate to make the job easier. With the portal, he can use the gate's properties, which made things a little bit easier, but he's lying because he was so tired, he thought he was going to pass out and complains about his life. Anyway, our hero continues the cleanup because he needed to get everything ready soon, and he discovers something incredible when he realizes he can fix the portal coordinates between worlds. This means objects could interact even if they were in different worlds worlds from each other. Our hero tests the theory by pouring water into the cave, and is shocked that it actually works. After finishing the cleanup, he looks proudly and thinks the cave looks much more decent, but our protagonist still needs to scrub all the stains left on the walls, and after that, he plans to pour concrete on the floor so he can store his things there. The guy remembers that mortar takes a few days to dry, and he still needs the protection panels. Suddenly, he finds luminous stones and admission stones embedded in the cave walls. Our hero picks up the stones and realizes they are a real gold mine in the game. With a smile on his face, he decides he's going to mine everything as soon as the construction is done. The next day, with 29 days to go, our boy is completely wiped out. Our protagonist can barely stand and wonders if he overdid it with the hard work. He then notices several small cuts on his arm and doesn't remember how he got so injured. Still, he thinks it's not serious enough to use one of his sun apples, so, to test the effect, he decides to make the ointment, which has a very simple recipe. For this, he mixes guaca powder and vegetable oil in a 1-to-1 ratio in a bowl. With his experience as a cook, our hero just stirs everything until the mixture becomes consistent. A system window informs him that the ointment is useful and heals wounds, which was a piece of cake for him to make. Our boy then applies the cream to his arm and feels his wounds healing, but he becomes thoughtful and wonders if things will always be this difficult and tiring. To increase his stats, he needs to fight, but he fears he won't last until the apocalypse arrives. The guy then thinks that a slingshot or a firearm could make his life much easier. Suddenly, our protagonist stops and has a brilliant idea that could change his future. Our hero then remembers something very important about the lore of the game Sura, but he knows it was just background story and wonders if it will happen in real life. Anyway, he thinks this isn't useless information and decides to investigate further. With that, he grabs his hard drive because if the game's events happen, he'll have a huge advantage. With a determined look, our boy decides it's worth investigating this clue thoroughly. With his plan laid out, he goes up to the roof and prepares for the construction of his base. Fortunately, the bags of mortar he ordered arrived, and the work went very smoothly. Our protagonist then goes down to the first floor to get the rest of the things he ordered, but as he was about to move the boxes, Hoshi-san appears and calls our hero's name excitedly. The woman gives a cheerful, "Good afternoon," and our boy notices they've gotten much closer. Our protagonist comments that he's been seeing her a lot lately, and the girl gets a bit flustered. He apologizes for being busy with the shop's renovation, but the woman says he really does look busy. She then comments that he used to go to her salon only once every 3 months for a haircut. Our boy agrees with her, and the woman takes the chance to offer him a haircut. Since he needed a new haircut for exploration, he ends up accepting the hairdresser's proposal. At the salon, she asks how he wants his hair, and our protagonist shocks her by asking to shave it all off. Shocked by the request, she asks why, and our hero says it's to mark a new beginning in his life. The woman then understands and promises to give him the best cut possible to start this new phase. While cutting, she notices his shoulders are broader, and he says he started working out recently. At this, she reveals that she heard the status window is connected to a game called Survival Life. The girl also says that the Awakener people who played that game at least once. With a serious face, our hero asks where she got that information, and the woman gets very nervous. Suddenly, a guy with a snake tattoo on his arm appears and interrupts their conversation. This is Owen, our hero's neighbor, who came to share some important information. Our boy is then shocked to find out the guy was Hoshi-san's source and that he lied about him. The woman confirms that her group is trying to find the streamer, so he can share what he knows. The blonde guy then tells the girl that they aren't in a position to be picky. With a serious look, he says they aren't in a position to choose what to do in this situation. For him, getting the streamer is for everyone's good, but our hero already feels this will go south. The neighbor then pressures the woman to join the team, but she still seems very undecided. Our protagonist thinks it's absurd because he deleted the video out of disillusionment, not greed. The tattooed guy gets annoyed with the woman and says everything is happening just like in the game Sura. He even blames the streamer for everything, and our boy realizes he talks as if he's already caught him. The blonde guy then warns that he won't wait long, and the woman wonders if she should share the information. He pressures her to make a quick decision, but is interrupted by a very familiar voice. Our hero then turns around with his new haircut and asks them to discuss this later. Annoyed by the interruption, the neighbor turns and asks who he thinks he is to meddle. Our hero then faces the neighbor and tells him to leave so he doesn't get humiliated again. The blonde guy gets scared and starts to sweat, threatened by our boy's words. With that, the neighbor decides today is not a good day and leaves while the woman says goodbye. Hoshi-san breathes a sigh of relief, and our protagonist calls her over to talk for a bit. He asks for her number, warning that the guy is not a good person to get involved with. Back home, our hero puts the construction aside and turns on his computer to do some research. The guy then enters a forum and sees that the community is trashing him a lot. He looks for tips and finds an anonymous post that seems to be from the person he was looking for. The user's name is Taming, and our boy thinks it's crazy easy for him to use a verified account. For this, the post was full of insults and people planning to hunt down our protagonist in real life. In addition, there were posts planning to harass Hoshi-san, which makes our hero furious. Our boy turns off the computer, disgusted, but says he's not mentally shaken. But suddenly something happens, and a new energy starts to take over his entire body. Our protagonist feels his mind clear and opens the dimensional gate with a smile. For the next 2 days, he works on the Hideout, mining stones to relieve stress. He spreads the mortar mixed with water on the cave floor to make the flooring. Next, the guy uses a tool to smooth everything evenly, leaving the surface flat. After finishing the job, our protagonist goes outside to wait for the mortar to dry. Looking at the moon appearing in the darkness, a new thought comes to his mind at that moment. He thinks, an eye for an eye, and decides he's not a hero, so he doesn't need a grand sense of mission. Our boy then understands that in the end, the only thing that really matters is surviving the apocalypse. But just as he makes this resolution, something hits him hard from behind. Suddenly, our hero quickly turns around to see what attacked him so unexpectedly and stealthily. As luck would have it, a bone crawler appears in front of him, ready to start the fight. The skeleton's eyes glow intensely, and our protagonist says his mood is already terrible. With that, the creature unleashes a huge explosion that devastates the entire area around them. After the explosion, everything is covered in smoke and dust from the monster's powerful attack. Our protagonist is thrown to the ground, completely stunned by the force of the impact. He tries to get up, but his body is heavy, and he struggles to move his hands to support himself. With great effort, our hero manages to get up and coughs from the smoke and the pain of the blow. Confused on the ground, our hero wonders what happened as he tries to remember everything. He then sees the remains of the skeleton and recalls that a bone crawler appeared out of nowhere. Our boy questions how he managed to survive that explosion and looks at his injured arm. In a flashback, he remembers seeing the monster about to explode right in front of him without warning. To escape his demise, he ran desperately to get as far away from the danger as possible. Looking at his arm, he sees several bone fragments as proof that he narrowly escaped. With that, our protagonist summons his status window to check his current condition. His attributes have dropped significantly, but he's relieved not to have any broken bones or injured organs. The guy then notices his level and GP went up and wonders if he defeated the monster. With a confused mind, our hero complains that he's not thinking straight right now. Even injured, he focuses and, with a determined look, opens the dimensional gate to return. Back in his house, the guy immediately starts treating his wounds with his medical kit. With tweezers, he pulls out the fragments stuck in his body and screams in pain during the procedure. Next, our boy applies the guaca ointment to stop the bleeding and complains about the pain. To finish, he wraps everything with bandages and hopes his attributes recover soon. Exhausted, our boy ends up falling asleep on the couch as if he passed out from fatigue. The next day, he wakes up and thinks that if he keeps this up, he'll definitely meet his end. He wanted to check the effects of the bandage, but the exhaustion was so great he couldn't even manage it. Our protagonist opens the status window and sees that the treatment was effective, but he's still weak. Still recovering, he wonders where the heck that bone crawler came from out of nowhere. He then grabs a bottle of water and thinks that in such a large forest, it's not strange for one to appear. To avoid being caught off guard again, our hero decides he needs to increase his cognition. He remembers that in Suare, there were 2 ways to increase attributus. The first was by training a lot. The second way to get stronger was by obtaining items that directly increased stats. But to get these items, you had to defeat high, level or special event monsters. In addition, high-rank monsters had skills that could be acquired if the conditions were met. To find an answer on how to get items, our hero decides to check the game's lore. He remembers a story about warning signs that occurred before the Mozambique asteroid fell. Our protagonist thinks that if the signs happen in reality, he can get items before the end. After researching the lore thoroughly, he discovers there were 3 warning signs in total. The last sign is a Russian ship, but before that, there's the hobgoblin, about which he has no precise information. The first sign is the orc incident on Mount Shurco, which happened on June 26th. Since the orc's body was found on the 26th, he needs to leave on the night of the 25th to get there in time. With this information in mind, our protagonist quickly starts preparing for the mission. But suddenly his phone rings, and he wonders what Hoshi-san wants with him at this hour. They then meet at a cafe to talk, and he seems a bit tired of the situation. The woman asks if he's okay, and our hero questions what she's talking about. She says he looks down and is wearing long sleeves even in the heat, but he brushes it off. With that, she asks if he's angry because of the interruption the other day, and he denies it. Hoshi-san is then relieved and says she was a little worried about him. Because of that, our boy agrees but admits he really doesn't that blonde guy at all. He tells her that last winter, he saw the neighbor harassing pedestrians with his illegal tow truck. Our protagonist finishes the story and warns Hoshi-san to be careful around that guy. He then asks why she called him, and the woman asks to whisper something in his ear. The girl then reveals she's an awakened, and our hero is shocked, wondering why she told him that. Our protagonist decides to play along and pretends to be envious for not having awakened a power. The woman apologizes for lying, and our hero says he knows she's not a bad person. He then thanks her for always sharing important information with him, and he lies, saying that thanks to her, his mind has cleared up because he was stressed with the renovation. With a smile, he says he's going to study a bit about the game's survival life to understand it better. Back in his room, our boy thinks that his mood has improved thanks to Hoshi-san. He then finalizes his plan and buys a state-of-the-art drone for forest reconnaissance. In addition, our protagonist also rents a car to use for the remaining period. With everything ready, he goes to bed early to get his body in top shape for the mission. The next day, our hero starts making materials to defeat the orc from dawn. Grinding the ignition stone into fine pieces required a lot of patience and care. The reason for this is that if he hit it too hard, the stone would simply catch fire. The luminous stone was the same, and he holds one that shines brightly in his hand. The sparks that came off hurt his eyes, but the performance was good, so he put up with it. After finishing the preparations to hunt the orc, he gets everything ready for the big battle. For his mixture, he adds sugar, gasoline, and various organic solvents to a can. Next, our hero mixes the ignition stone powder and resin with a hardener. With everything ready, he sets up a table near the gate and returns to the real world. Already outside, our protagonist opens the trunk of his rented car with a smile and celebrates because it was worth spending on a good rental car. After putting all his tools and equipment inside, he closes the trunk. Now in the driver's seat, our boy prepares to finally set off on his mission. With that, he steps on the gas and heads towards Mount Shurco. Before the date changes, our hero arrives at the Shurco campground parking lot. To pass the time, he uses the extra time to mentally train by watching his videos. Next, the guy finishes checking all the equipment he prepared for the hunt. Exactly at midnight, he realizes it's time to start his search for the orc. Our protagonist then gets out of the car and steps into the rain, preparing for the exploration. With his rain gear and a headlamp, he finally begins the search. 2 hours later, the rain gets even heavier, and our hero complains about the situation. And to make matters worse, the dense fog prevents him from seeing the path ahead clearly. He can barely see because of the dense fog covering the forest. Walking in the rain, our boy wonders where the orc will suddenly appear from. He remembers that the monster wasn't found near the campground and continues his search. Discouraged, our hero starts to think that in reality, the warning signs don't happen. But at that exact moment, a deafening noise echoes through the forest, startling him. He recognizes that voice and quickly turns to see what's happening. On top of a hill, he finally spots the silhouette of a giant orc in the darkness. To his surprise, it's a red orc, and he knows he can get a skill if he defeats it. With that, our protagonist grabs a flare and prepares to put his plan into action. With the flare lit, he believes that if he follows the plan, he can defeat the creature. The orc extermination method he devised is very simple but highly effective. First, he uses the orc's aggressiveness to attract its attention by throwing the flare. The creature then gets distracted by the red light and approaches to investigate the object. The moment the monster attacks the light, our hero prepares for the next phase of the plan. Taking advantage of the fact that the monster's movement has stopped, he aims for the opening for his next step. Our hero then runs towards a creature and opens a dimensional gate right under it. The orc then falls straight into the portal that our boy opened on the ground with his special ability. On the other side of the portal, the guy grabs a special can, preparing for the next attack. The giant creature is furious because it doesn't understand how it suddenly ended up in another place. With that, our protagonist uses a flashbang to blind the monster, which screams in pain. He has 20 seconds until the orc's vision returns, and now it's a race against time. The orc's muscles become defenseless due to the blindness, and our boy moves into attack. With a precise cut, he hits the monster's leg to restrict its movements. The creature then lets out a cry of agony, its red eyes glowing with pure rage. Even blind and injured, the orc attacks with its axe, trying to hit our hero with a swing, but our protagonist calmly dodges and prepares for the final counter attack. Seizing the opening, he lands a precise stab in the giant creature's arm. The monster then lets out another scream of pain, feeling the blade's poison in its body. Now out of strength, the creature finally falls to its knees, looking completely defeated. As the orc sits down and lowers its head, he takes the chance to finish the fight. Our boy then prepares to use the fire can he created for the battle. With a swift movement, he shoves the can with the lit fuse straight into the monster's mouth. A gigantic explosion occurs, and the creature seems to have finally been defeated for good. Our protagonist celebrates the victory and says that should be enough for an orc, but suddenly, a powerful punch hits our hero squarely with brutal force. He is then thrown far away and hits the ground hard, not understanding what happened. Lying on the ground, the guy curses himself for letting his guard down before confirming the victory. The orc is still standing with its body on fire, and our boy is shocked by the scene. Seeing the monster still alive, he despairs and thinks this is his definitive end. But the creature finally falls, and he levels up, gaining a new instinct skill. Relieved, our hero sits near the burning body and says that was very dangerous. He then gets up and wonders where the item the monster was supposed to have dropped is. Suddenly, his watch glows and becomes an item that increases his cognition by 2 points. Our protagonist then looks at the orc's body and wonders what to do with it now. He thinks the incident should have a news embargo but wonders if he should leak the information. He's reluctant because if what Hoshi-san said is true, the awakened are former players of the game. With that, he imagines there are at least a few thousand people with special powers in the world. Our boy then worries, thinking about what would happen if only a few of them were evil. He remembers his neighbor, Namura, imagining him with a malicious and frightening smile. People like that would break the rules for personal gain, and the chance of riots would be very high. He knows that if he leaves the body there, it will turn into a bone crawler and hurt people tomorrow. But suddenly, he has an idea and wonders why he didn't think of the chance of becoming a zombie. Even as an awakened, there's no guarantee he won't transform if he gets infected. Our protagonist is unsure about the right choice and can't decide immediately. But one thing is certain, and with a determined look, our hero opens his dimensional gate. He decides that for the sake of the few survivors, the world needs to have a very orderly and peaceful end. With that in mind, our boy grabs a shovel and starts digging a hole with great anger. The guy complains that digging a hole to bury the monster will take a long time alone. He thinks that if he weren't injured, the work wouldn't be so difficult and keeps digging. Suddenly, his ability activates, and he decides to give it his all to finish the job. With that, our protagonist starts digging at an absurd speed under the effect of his skill. Survival instinct seems like an overpowered skill, but it has a major weakness. As soon as he finishes the job, he opens the gate and runs before the skill's effect wears off. The side effect of the skill is that when the power runs out, his strength disappears, and he can't move. Our hero then floors it, hoping to get home in time before passing out. The scene then cuts, and we see our boy's neighborhood the next day with a beautiful sky. Now in his room, our protagonist realizes it's quite late, and the day is practically over. He thinks he would normally be putting up barbed wire, but today he's too tired. But he's relieved because the red orc's tracks must have vanished with the heavy rain. Since it's already late, he decides to check a package that arrived this morning to pass the time. With a bit of effort, our hero manages to open the wooden crate he ordered. Inside the box, he finds various medieval weapons and gets super excited about his new toys. He knows that in reality, he can only use the wooden club, but in the other world, he doesn't care. Even with so many weapons, our protagonist feels that some important items are still missing. Our hero reads a notice saying his spears were held up at customs for being illegal. At that, the doorbell rings, and our boy yells for the delivery person to leave the package at the door, but to his surprise, the person on the other side doesn't leave and keeps waiting there. The guy then wonders if the delivery person didn't hear him, because they keep ringing the bell. With no other choice, he gets up and decides to open the door to get his package. But upon opening the door, our protagonist is in for a big surprise and is shocked by the visitor. It was Hoshi-san, who apologizes for showing up out of the blue, but she really wanted to talk. She then shows a bag of food and says she brought something for them to eat together. The woman asks if he wants to eat tteokbokki with her so they can talk. Already inside the house, our protagonist feels a bit awkward with the unexpected situation. He still can't believe Hoshi-san is in his house at that moment. He blushes and starts to think that maybe she has other intentions with this visit, but the girl just calls him to eat, and our boy agrees excitedly. He then asks what she wanted to talk about, and the woman seems a bit hesitant. She reveals she only came to share information about the game since he was interested. Our protagonist thinks he can trust her and shares some important information. He believes that good people like her are essential for surviving an apocalypse. After the meal, our hero offers to take out the trash while the girl gets ready to leave. With that, he sets up the computer and decides to use a forum to share tips anonymously. The first thing our boy explains is about the iron death disease that destroys metals. He also warns that moving in large groups of 6 or more people attracts zombies and monsters. The guy then talks about how important cognition is for survival, and she seems to understand. The woman jots down the tips and concludes that cognition is the most important attribute for survival. As he was about to continue, the girl draws his attention to something she saw on the computer screen. Hoshi-san comments that the streamer Norimaki is being heavily flamed, just as the neighbors said. She asks why the streamer doesn't share his tips, and our hero pretends not to know anything. Our protagonist then asks what she thinks, and the girl says she understands the streamer's reason. She says that everyone has their own secrets they can't tell anyone. The woman then reveals that she declined the invitation to join their blonde neighbor's team, and she shows something on her phone, saying she has already met the people from that that suspicious group. The recording reveals the neighbors' group planning to force Hoshi-san to join them. Our hero gets furious hearing the audio and calls the guys scumbags with pure rage. He then warns the girl that in a disaster, people show their true nature. With that, our protagonist tells her not to trust anyone, but the woman questions him, ignoring the warning. The girl asks our hero to form a survival group with her. The guy falls silent for a moment because he can't answer that right away. He clenches his fist tightly, thinking about what he should do in this complicated situation. His goal is to reach level 10 before the tutorial to unlock the game's item shop. But the problem is that in the game, the level of the monsters adapts to the strongest player's level. So if she travels with him, the chance of encountering strong monsters and ending up done for is very high. To try and get rid of her, he says he might turn into a zombie, but the woman replies that it's okay. Suddenly, a purple aura surrounds her, and the girl decides to show him her special ability. She then reveals that her special characteristic is teleportation, and she just needs to avoid being bitten. The guy warns her not to show her skill to just anyone, but she says she trusts him completely. She makes a promise and says that if they both survive, they can be together. The woman then smiles and says that if they can't form a group, she hopes they can cooperate with each other. The next day, our hero starts building a fence for his Hideout and finds the task quite easy. First, he uses a heavy tool to firmly drive all the middle posts into the forest ground. Next, our protagonist starts unrolling the barbed wire around the posts to create the protection. With everything in place, our boy tightly ties the wire to the post to make the fence very secure. He finishes by installing sensors and is exhausted but satisfied with the excellent work he did. With the mortar dry and the defense ready, the guy says it's now time to bring in his luggage. Inside the cave, he organizes the boxes and celebrates because he has everything he needs to survive. Our hero thinks he just needs to divide the space with panels for the interior to be finally ready. But suddenly, a cold draft of air enters the cave and makes our protagonist sneeze loudly. Shivering from the cold, he complains that the other world is freezing and feels like late November. Our boy thinks he'll end up sleeping there, so he needs to prepare with a heater. The guy also realizes that the cave entrance needs a real door, not a curtain. Our hero jots everything down and thinks the to-do list is just getting longer and longer. So, he goes to a woodworking shop and asks the owner to handle a special project for him. For the next 5 hours, he decides to check the places where he can get important items. While jotting everything down, he suddenly hears a familiar voice calling him and turns to see who it is. The guy then recognizes the man and calls him by his name excitedly. As it's been a while since they've seen each other, this is Taki Kurokawa, a gym owner, divorced, and with a young daughter to raise. His friend asks if something happened, and our hero says yes, but without going into too much detail. The strong man then notices the guy's muscles and says he's been using his body for the renovations. With a serious look, the gym owner asks what the things our boy mentioned are about. Our protagonist is then surprised and asks if his friend has also heard the rumors about the end. The big guy asks if he believes it, and our hero replies that he's on the fence. Taiki then shares that he saw a guy floating in the air, so he's sure the awakened are real. With that, our protagonist laments not having awakened, but his friend says he didn't either. He tells him that the awakened person went to a TV station to try to make money with their powers. Sitting on the stairs, the big guy says the man is going to meet with a television producer. Our hero then says the existence of the awakened will soon be known, but his friend disagrees. The gym owner says he's referring to the shooting incident in Kasumita City. Our protagonist is shocked by the news, and his friend asks if he didn't see the morning paper. The guy says he's been busy, and the gym owner tells him to check the internet forums. On a forum, people are discussing how the news of the shooting just disappeared from all channels. Our boy is shocked by the censorship, and his friend says he almost fainted when he saw the news. With a thoughtful look, the strong man says he also saw the news earlier that day. He mentions that the entire city was sealed off by the self-defense forces after the alleged incident. The gym owner is sure they are hiding something, and our hero suddenly calls out to him. Our protagonist runs off, saying he remembered something, and his friend shouts for him to buy some protein. Back home, he realizes the government already knew about the situation because they deleted the news. With that in mind, our hero opens the folders with the game videos on his computer. He thinks that almost no one should know the exact date of the first warning sign. Besides, he remembers that he buried the red orca's body to have an orderly end. With his hand on his chin, he wonders why a shooting would happen right at that moment. He wonders if someone leaked the information to the government so they could act preemptively. The guy deduces that the informant doesn't have an attack power, which is why they haven't appeared in public. He doesn't know who it is, but he's sure someone is behind everything that's happened. A mysterious figure in a suit seems to be observing all the events from the shadows. officials. This man appears to be the contact behind the government and is acting very suspiciously, but a sinister hooded figure seems to be the true mastermind behind the events. Our hero then starts thinking and narrows down the possible suspects to a small group. For our protagonist, the only culprits could be the game's creator or the 3 players. After much thought, our boy decides to exclude the creator from his list of suspects. The guy doesn't know how they managed to do it, but the game has become reality. This only increases the chance that they are the real culprits behind all these events. He thinks that, if the creator were with the government, they wouldn't have let him take out the orc. With that in mind, he concludes that his former friends are the most suspicious of all, and of these 3, he believes the kitten player is the prime suspect in the case. If his guess is right, he won't need to share information with the government, but the guy sighs tiredly because, deep down, he has no way of knowing the truth. Our boy knows that the player could be very different in real life than in the game. Anyway, our hero wants to find his old friends and decides to trust them for now. He knows that leaking information won't prevent the disaster, so he decides not to act carelessly. 2 days later, the door to his cave is finally ready, and he prepares to move in. With that, our boy finishes organizing all the food he stockpiled for the apocalypse. He looks at his base and says this is all he can do until the power generator arrives. Next, our protagonist plans to put in a steel tray and drill through the wall with a power drill. But he realizes the Hideout space is much smaller than he initially imagined. The guy finishes waterproofing the basement, but can't put anything there until it's completely dry. With that, our hero decides he'll think about it later, because he has other priorities now. He then grabs his drone and virtual reality glasses, because his new mission is about to begin. Our boy flies the drone, and is impressed by the size of the forest, which looks like the Amazon. Even so, he's happy because the drone is the best tool for exploring such a large place. With the drone, he doesn't have to worry about encountering dangers during the forest exploration. In addition, our protagonist can also create maps very easily using the technology. He's happy he bought an expensive model, but has no time to celebrate his success. Our hero begins the exploration with the drone, starting from his hideout to map the entire area. He discovers a snowy mountain to the northwest, but the drone's signal starts to fail there. Then, to the south, he finds the sea and realizes that food is abundant and there are no monsters there. Our boy thinks about setting traps there but sees a purple octopus fighting a crab. After the beach, he explores the canyon near the Hideout and is relieved not to find the Olbeer. Suddenly, our protagonist recognizes a specific location while flying over the forest with the drone. It's the place where he fought the Olbeer, but the body of the goblin he buried is gone. He wonders if the Olbeer ate the body, and if the bone crawler was from another creature. But our hero analyzes the tracks and realizes he can't jump to conclusions just yet. Looking closer, he confirms there are several goblin tracks all over the area. The problem is that the distance between the tracks and his hideout is only 1 kilometer. With that in mind, he realizes his hideout might be more dangerous than it seemed. Knowing there are goblins nearby, he presses the automatic return button to devise a plan. On the way back, he takes the opportunity to investigate and notes the presence of a swamp and other animals. With the map complete, our boy finally understands the terrain and the animals living in that world. Our protagonist decides that now he will explore each place personally to get more detailed information. Fully equipped, he sets out on his first mission, which is to check if he can farm in the swamp he found. But suddenly, a strange sound catches his attention, and he takes out his phone to check what's happening. Our boy then realizes the noise is from the infrared sensor he installed on his protective fence. Speak of the devil. He sees that the goblins are already there and realizes the creatures are quite reckless. Analyzing the tracks, he concludes that it's not the whole group and that only 6 to 8 monsters have come. With that, our hero puts on his helmet and decides to follow the creatures' tracks to investigate. The guy then follows the long trail of footprints, thinking this is the perfect chance to learn more about them. Suddenly, his watch starts to glow, and he realizes it's because of his increased cognition. Because of this, the small sounds around him, like insects, seem much louder than normal. With his enhanced hearing, he finally manages to hear the sound of the creatures approaching him. Hiding in the woods, he finds the monsters and notices a hobgoblin is also in the middle of the mess. The creatures are fighting over a small white rabbit, and our boy understands the fight is about food. Seeing the monster's distraction, our hero realizes this is the perfect chance for a surprise attack. With that, he draws his bowstring and fires an energy arrow right into the middle of the goblin group. The energy arrow then hits the hobgoblin's head squarely with incredible precision. With their leader defeated, the other goblins are completely shocked by the unexpected scene. The creatures then look around, confused and scared, not understanding what just happened. Suddenly, the monsters start screaming in panic, and chaos takes over the group all at once. Our hero then seizes the chance and fires another arrow, hitting another goblin squarely. Seeing their friends fall, the remaining goblins get furious and charge at him with everything they've got, but our protagonist was expecting this and grabs his axe, preparing for the fight. With a swift movement, our boy charges against the monsters and hits the first one with his axe. Next, he skillfully dodges an attack and prepares for a quick counter attack. With a precise blow, our hero hits one of the goblins with his knife, right in the middle of the chest. Having already defeated 4 monsters, our protagonist prepares to finish off the rest of the group, but just as he was about to finish his sentence, the goblins throw needles at him. The needles are blocked by a barrier, and our hero complains about being interrupted. The monsters then scream in anger and charge once more to try and defeat our boy. He realizes that if ranged attacks don't work, the monsters resort to close combat. Our hero then praises the monsters' tactic as they charge straight into his trap. Of course, he already had a card up his sleeve and pulls out one of his flashbangs to use. With that, he throws the bomb on the ground to stun all the monsters at once. The monsters get dizzy, and our boy realizes the status effect worked well. He then draws his knife, preparing to finish the fight against the creatures. With a quick strike, he yells that this is the end and finishes off all the monsters at once. With the victory, our protagonist levels up to level 4 and gains 16 GP points. He then feels confident with the result and says he can fight against them. But now comes the boring part, and our hero grabs a shovel to start burying the bodies. Suddenly, his survival instinct skill activates. To his surprise, with the power of the skill, he digs the hole at an absurd speed and is shocked by the result. Even surprised, he thinks the skill's activation wasn't a total waste. He feels that the side effect isn't as strong as it was in the fight against the orc. With the job finished, he looks at the pile of dirt, satisfied with his work. Now our boy prepares to check the items he got from the battle against the monsters. Our hero then finds a gok of fruit and is surprised to see the whole fruit. Seeing the large quantity of fruits, he deduces there must be a place to harvest them nearby. The guy then decides to check the boss's bag and finds something very strange inside. With wide eyes, our protagonist is shocked by the unexpected discovery. In his hands, he holds a small blue frog and wonders what this creature is and why on earth would goblins have a live frog among their things. Suddenly, a strange smell catches his attention, and he brings the creature closer to his nose. The frog then releases a green liquid, and our boy realizes what it might actually be. Our protagonist is then shocked as he recognizes the liquid as goblin poison. With a determined look, he decides he needs to raise that frog at all costs. The reason for this is that with the frog's poison, he can increase his resistance to poisons. Besides, he can also apply the poison to his weapons to make combat much easier. With that in mind, he decides to name the frog Dakhan and promises to give it lots of food. A system window informs him that he has formed a bond with the frog and that it is now his possession. Our hero wonders if the game had this system and if it's a secret mechanic of reality. He remembers that in the last week of the game, there were no updates, so it doesn't make sense, but he thinks this wouldn't happen right before the game's service ended, so he dismisses the idea. With that, he decides to put this matter aside for now as he needs to focus on exploring the forest. So, our protagonist goes through the dimensional gate to return to the other world and continue his mission. Now prepared for exploration, our hero starts searching the surroundings of his base. In doing so, he finds a small spring that the drone couldn't detect and is quite surprised. The guy then takes some of the water to check and realizes it's just normal, drinkable water. With that, he notes that he no longer needs to go to the swamp since he already has a safe water source. Our boy also finds gaka trees and oil fruit sprouts. Just as he expected to find, he harvests a large quantity of guaca fruits to use in his healing potions. After getting what he needs, he decides to save the oil fruit sprouts for later use. To avoid getting lost, our protagonist leaves marks on the trees along the way to remember the route. With the mission completed, our hero smiles with satisfaction and prepares to finally go home. The next day, in his house, our boy calls for Dakhan because it's time for his meal. With tweezers, he offers a grasshopper to the little frog, who seems to be very hungry. The blue creature then waits patiently for its food while our hero prepares. The little frog Dakhan then uses its long tongue and devours the grasshopper in the blink of an eye. With that, our protagonist praises his new pet and says he will take care of it on the second floor. He then creates a perfect environment for the frog because the species needs a very warm place. Our boy thinks that if he took it to the Hideout, the creature would probably freeze to its end. Besides taking care of the frog, our hero had many other things to do, like extracting the poison. And of all the tasks, the one that took the most time was precisely extracting the creature's poison. The test tubes then glow with the poison he he extracted, and our hero continues the work. After a while, he finishes making the ointments and realizes he made an excessive amount. Our protagonist thinks he can't give it to Hoshi-san because she would find it all very suspicious. But suddenly, he stops for a moment and has a brilliant idea to solve this problem. Our boy decides he will give the ointments as a gift to his friend Taiki. At his friend's gym, the strong man prepares for another day of intense and heavy training. The friend then drinks the protein shake our hero brought and praises the exceptional taste. Our protagonist apologizes, and Taiki complains that he was left alone with a bandage on his head. His friend didn't expect the gift to be a jar of protein, but accepts the apology. Taiki then picks up the ointment and asks what it is, and our hero says it's for healing wounds. The strong man jokes, asking if it's a pyramid scheme, and our boy quickly denies it. With that, the gym owner thanks him for the information about the game's SURI while browsing his phone. But our protagonist says he's the one who should be grateful because his friend warned him about the shooting. Our hero then asks why the gym is empty, and his friend answers mysteriously. The big guy reveals that everyone is busy with a plan, and our boy asks what that plan is. He then explains that the gym has become a base for the members at the request of the Awakened from TV. Our protagonist asks how many people are in the group, and his friend says about 20. Worried, he warns that groups with more than 5 people are dangerous, but Taiki seems decided. The friend then says he can't abandon them because they are all members of his gym and his responsibility. Our boy asks what he's going to do, and the strong man says he'll think about it a bit more. With that, Taiki starts inviting him to join the group if he doesn't have a place to stay, but suddenly, our hero hears a scream and runs off, leaving his friend behind. Confused, our protagonist then runs to the window to see what was happening outside. He has a look of shock on his face, sweating profusely from what he just saw. Outside, he finds Hoshi-san collapsed on the ground and desperately yells her name. The woman then slowly opens her eyes, and our hero asks if she's awake and okay. She asks why our boy is there, and he says that's his line in this situation. The woman says she doesn't remember well, but someone attacked her, and Taiki tells our hero to take care of her. Our boy tries to stop his friend from going alone, but he says he's just going to take a look around. With his hand on his head, our protagonist is very worried about his friend's reckless attitude. He then asks the woman about the culprit's face, but she doesn't remember anything. The girl explains that suddenly everything went dark, and she can't remember anything else. With a dark look, he wonders if the neighbors' guys have already started to move. With that, he advises the woman to use her teleport ability. If something like this happens again, he then says he will give her self-defense equipment to carry at all times. Our hero thinks that if she's not careful from now on, things will get really ugly. A saying then appears, stating that if 5 people gather, at least one of them is no good. The narration concludes by saying that, unfortunately, there are malicious people everywhere in the world. It explains that in the game SURI, it was even worse because the administration was terrible and did nothing. Because of this, trolls infiltrated groups, pretending to be nice people to deceive other players. They would then lead the group into hordes of monsters so that everyone would be eliminated at once. These guys pretended to be good people and got close to newbies to steal all their items. With a wicked smile, the evil player celebrates, tricking another newbie in the game. In addition, they also created fights between groups so they would fight each other to the end. With an evil laugh, the trolls celebrated as they committed all sorts of wickedness within the game. This caused the already unpopular game to lose almost all its players in just 1 year. The narration reveals that one of the reasons only 4 players remained was because they punished the trolls. Our hero thinks about this because now is the perfect time for trolls to act freely in the real world. Summarizing the information, he realizes that after the shooting, the Awakened community integrated. People not only shared information, but also recruited new companions for their groups. Our boy then notices that someone is trying to sell his old videos to other players. But suddenly, something on the screen catches his attention, and he leans closer to see the post better. The post is from a user named Help Me, and our hero remembers that this guy was a troll in the game. The post says they are videos of him fighting with our hero, but the guy wonders when he ever played with that person. He then realizes the guy is lying to sell the videos and gets really annoyed by the situation. Our boy is impressed and wonders how people can come up with such bad ideas. To deal with people like that, he gets up and stretches because he needs to prepare much better. With that in mind, our hero decides he needs to increase his training time to get stronger. In these 13 days, he made time to study survival techniques and how to use weapons in combat, but most of the videos were about strategies to defeat otherworldly monsters, like goblins. These tactics ignore the iron death disease that would destroy all metal weapons. So, from today on, our protagonist has a new plan in mind to prepare for the end. He needs weapons that will work after the disease, and are perfect for combat and against against zombies. With that, he decides to choose the weapons he will use and opens a box with his new equipment. He shows his new weapons like a war club, a slingshot, and a stone axe. Our boy thinks these are the only weapons he can really use to fight at the moment. Of all of them, he picks the slingshot because he believes the weapon is highly useful for him. Our hero then fires, and the stone hits the target with incredible force, full of blue energy. He notices the clay bullets are a bit weak, but in the end, it all comes down to another weapon. With that, he picks up the war club and thinks he doesn't need to worry about the iron disease. The easiest way to defeat zombies is by crushing their skulls to destroy the spores. When the shop opens, he plans to buy bludgeoning weapons, so he needs to increase his proficiency. He starts training with the weapon, but wonders if it will be effective in combat against other players. Honestly, our hero isn't so sure and continues to practice his movements with the weapon. He thinks he can't do anything against mental type awakened, who are much more dangerous. Still, our protagonist can't just stand by and grips his weapon tighter. He remembers that in the game, defeating a player gave 50 GP points and takes a deep breath. We see an illustration of what combat against other players would be like in the world of Suara. In the game, if you were registered as a PK player killer, you had to fight to the end with other users. This PK system kept player versus player combat in check but had a flaw. To gain GP, many people didn't care about the risk and attacked others without thinking. With a glint in his eye, our boy seems to understand the gravity of the upcoming situation. Because of this, he is sure that many players will end up hunting others to get stronger. After the training, our hero takes a deep breath and seems very tired from all the effort. With that, he wipes the sweat from his face and decides it's better to avoid fighting until he has items and skills. He also takes the opportunity to close the shop for good and install sensors on the second floor of his house. Suddenly, a wolf's howl echoes through the forest, and our boy is surprised by the noise. The guy grabs his phone and gets worried because the howl came from near his Hideout. Already equipped with his helmet, our protagonist goes to investigate what's happening outside. There, he finds a giant gray wolf lying down and thinks he could easily ride it. Our hero carefully approaches the creature and wonders if the animal is really gone. He thinks the wolf must have been separated from its pack or was attacked to end up there. To find out the truth, our boy decides he needs to check the animal's wounds. With that, he crouches down and starts looking for any injuries on the creature's body. But suddenly, something jumps at him very quickly and completely unexpectedly. To his surprise, a small white wolf pup attacks his arm with full force, catching him off guard. Our protagonist then looks at the creature and realizes the connection between the two wolves. The pup barks to protect the she-wolf, and our hero asks if that's his mother. Our hero then becomes hesitant and wonders what he should do with the little pup. Seeing the little wolf lick its mother, he decides he can't just take the pup by force. With that in mind, our boy grabs a shovel because he needs to bury the she-wolf's body quickly. He starts digging and explains that if the wolf is a monster, it will turn into a bone crawler. After finishing the hole, the guy takes a deep breath and seems very tired from all the work. Our protagonist looks at the pup and feels sorry for it because the scene reminds him of his childhood. He remembers a little dog named Chibi that he had when he was much younger. With nothing else to do, our hero approaches and picks up the small white wolf pup in his arms. 89-7 with the little animal in his lap. Our boy tells it to listen because he has something important to say. Our protagonist informs him that the pup's mother will rest in peace in that place from now on. He promises to make a hole in the cave door so he can visit his mother whenever he wants. In addition, our hero takes something out of his pocket to offer the little wolf pup. He assures him that he won't let the little guy go hungry until he's older. In return, our protagonist asks the pup to help him with its super sensitive sense of smell. He then asks what the little wolf thinks of the proposal. While the pup drools over the meat, our hero asks if the pup wants to go with him while offering a piece of meat. The little wolf then barks super excitedly, accepting the proposal, and our boy celebrates the answer. He then names the pup Dingo, and the system informs him that he has formed a bond with the wolf. In short, Dingo was a genius, and our boy calls him to start training on the roof. With a smile, he encourages his new partner and asks him to try again as they practiced. The little wolf then obeys the commands to shake and roll over, showing that he learns very quickly. Next, our protagonist tells Dingo to sit, and the pup obeys instantly. Soon after, he asks the little wolf to lie down, and the pup obeys its new owner's command. Our hero then makes a shush sign, and Dingo stops barking immediately. For the next test, he tells the pup to stay and walks away to see if the pup will obey. Now ready for the final test, our boy takes a toy from his bag to use. With that, he throws the toy into the air and yells for Dingo to jump and catch the object. The little wolf then jumps from the boxes and catches the toy in mid-air with impressive agility. Our protagonist is shocked and says the animals from the other world are really different. He praises Dingo because even though he's small, the pup can already use his sense of smell to track. Our protagonist then hugs the pup affectionately and calls him a cute little thing, blushing. But at this rate, things will soon start to happen. open, and his phone vibrates in his pocket. He then takes out the device and finds it strange, because Takei rarely contacts him. On the screen, a message from his friend tells him to search for levitation power on the internet. With that, he sees the news of a psychic who predicted the apocalypse and demonstrated levitation on TV. The news was the most read of the day, and in the comments, people doubted the truth of it all. Our boy then notices that many comments are from people who don't know the game's URA. In addition, some awakened complain that levitation would be useless against a horde of zombies. Our hero finds the situation funny and closes his tablet with an ironic smile. He thinks that people criticize him for not leaking information, but also don't like it when it is leaked. With his hand on his face, our protagonist wonders how the government will act from now on. He imagines that with the shooting and the psychic, there could be major demonstrations in the streets, but our boy decides that the best thing to do is to simply stay out of all this mess. He doesn't know when it will happen, but he is prepared for whatever comes in the future. If the Hobgoblin event, the second warning sign, occurs, the government's plans will become clear. Therefore, he needs to use his time more effectively and turns with a determined look, telling Dingo that from today they are going exploring. And the pup barks. With that, our protagonist prepares and says he's counting on his new partner's help, while the pup barks excitedly, ready to start the new mission with its owner. Among the many things to do, he and his new friends set off to explore the forest together, and there's a good reason he chose to bring the little wolf on his exploration journey. He then takes a bag with the scent of a goblin and asks if Dingo can find the trail, while the pup stares at the bag with a very serious and focused expression to memorize the scent. The pup starts sniffing the ground, and to prepare for the Hobgoblin event, our hero has a plan, and the first part is to make Dingo completely memorize the scent of goblins. The pup then runs through the forest barking, and our boy watches from a distance with a smile, because Dingo needs to remember the scent so they can find the monsters more easily. To his surprise, the pup manages to find the location with just a very faint scent and grabs a piece of red cloth, bringing it to its owner with great pride. But the other reason for the training was much more important and dangerous for the pup, as he needed to test if Dingo could follow his instructions during a real combat situation. Our hero then makes a hand signal, and the pup needs to follow his orders calmly, as this part of the training is essential for them to fight together without problems. With the signal from its owner, the small wolf charges forward at high speed with a golden aura, seeming ready to show its full hunting potential to its new master. The purpose of the test was to confirm if Dingo could hunt a strangely colored rabbit, while our protagonist observes the scene from a distance to see how his partner will perform on the mission. The rabbit eats the grass peacefully but doesn't notice the rapidly approaching danger, as the wolf pup charges at its prey without making a sound. With a precise leap, Dingo manages to capture the rabbit, and our hero praises the good work. Now they can finally hunt properly in the other world without much trouble. Our boy says it wasn't bad at all, and that last time the rabbit escaped, and he didn't confirm. But now with Dingo, the hunt was a success, and he can analyze the creature calmly. With that, he holds the rabbit by the ears and analyzes its constitution and sharp claws, seeming very satisfied with the result of the hunt with his partner. He confirms that the animals of the other world are much stronger than normal ones, and Dingo barks. After the successful hunt, the pair continues their exploration through the vast and mysterious forest. But during the walk, something catches our hero's attention, and he wonders about Dingo's cognition. He then gets the idea to test his harpoon in the valley to see how things work there. Suddenly, a system window informs him that his vitality has increased by 1 point, and he is shocked. Our boy remembers that as Norimaki, it took a lot of effort to increase vitality and celebrates. Suddenly, the pup runs off, and our protagonist yells its name, worried about the danger. He then scolds Dingo and tells him not to act alone in the forest because it's dangerous. While the pup drinks water, our hero tries to understand what the pup was sniffing for. In other words, he realizes what was bothering Dingo and finds some green peppers. Our protagonist is overjoyed because he was lucky enough to find buffalo peppers in that place. He praises Dingo and promises to give him lots of treats later while digging up the peppers. With an unexpected harvest, they set off for the last hunt, and our boy asks about smells. He knows that red trout are not monsters, so he won't get GP or items from them. A fish then jumps out of the water, and for Dingo, who is growing, this is a great experience. The narration explains that giving the pup various experiences is very important for its growth. With that, our hero hits the fish with his harpoon, and this experience has great meaning for Dingo. Our protagonist says the preparations are over and calls Dingo to go home. The next day, we see the sign of our boy's shop, which is now being permanently closed. Two men are removing the restaurant sign to take it away in a truck. The employee then says that if there are any problems, they should be contacted within 3 days. Looking at the empty shop, our hero feels a bit lonely with the sudden change. Despite the sadness, he knows that deep down, He had no other choice but to close. He thinks that for people who avoided becoming zombies, the situation will become very complicated. Our protagonist imagines that looting stores will become a natural thing for survivors. With a smile, he admits that if he survived, he would probably do the same, so he can't complain. Back at the shop, he thinks that at least he will clean everything up in the end, but he realizes he is not alone. It was Tiki, and our hero asks what he's doing there, and his friend says he put away the training equipment. The friend slaps him on the back and says that since he ignored his message, he came to see if he was alive. Taiki then notices Dingo and asks if he had a dog, and our boy explains that he adopted him. The strong man then crouches down and compliments Dingo, saying the pup is very handsome and charming. Our protagonist asks the reason for his visit, and his friend repeats that he just came to see if he was alive. The guy doubts that's the only reason, but the gym owner admits it wasn't just for that. With a serious look, he confesses that the truth is he came because he was very worried about everything. The friend then reveals that he found out who was responsible for attacking Hoshi-san the night before. In other words, he discovered the culprit's identity and shows a suspicious item on the table. Taiki says that Toro Itota's group attacked the woman and that the tow truck guy is also involved. He then points to a mountain and says their Hideout is in an abandoned area. Our hero asks how he knows all this, and his friend replies that the pieces just fit together. The guy doesn't understand the reference, and his friend talks about the guy who levitated on television. He says he had a hunch and asked the psychic, who confirmed he had met Itota's group, but the guy refused the invitation because he realized the group was only interested in women. Angrily, he slams the table and says that after the incident, some women wanted to leave his group. When he asked why, they said they were invited to a group of awakened people. Our boy then concludes that unlike Hoshi-san, the other woman fell for the bait. The friend then shows his phone, and the group went from 20 to just 4 people in a few days. Taiki says he understands the reason because in their group, there are only 2 awakened people. With his arms crossed, our hero finds it ironic how they repay kindness like that, but he can't do anything. He then worries about his daughter and thinks that Taiki's situation is very different from his. That's why our boy needs to confirm one thing and asks his friend something important. Our protagonist then asks what he would do if zombies appeared and threatened them. The friend replies that not hurting others is his policy, but absolute evil cannot be allowed to live. The gym owner finds the question strange and says it's not like him to talk about such things. Our hero replies that it was just a silly curiosity on his part. Suddenly, his phone beeps and Dingo barks, leaving his friend very confused by the situation. The guy then recognizes the sound of the lost pet prevention app and calls his friend. With a serious expression, he asks Taiki to take care of Dingo for a while, and his friend agrees. Elsewhere, Hoshi-san presses a panic button to call for help from her friends. Just then, Takuya Namura, the tow truck neighbor, appears with his group and tells her to get down from there. The woman then shouts that she has already refused the proposal and asks why they keep insisting. The blonde neighbor tells the woman to reconsider, but the group leader says that's enough. This is Toru Itota, and he warns that this place is a development area, and no one comes here. With a baseball bat in hand, he warns them not to underestimate them, because they have also awakened. With that, the man starts a countdown, and our hero hides with a slingshot, wearing a helmet so as not to be recognized. Our boy waits for the right moment to act. He then pulls the elastic of his weapon and prepares as the villain counts to 2. At the last second, our protagonist fires an energy sphere with all his might. The energy sphere then hits the leader's arm squarely. Right at the moment of the countdown, the guy falls to the ground in pain, and his partners wonder who made that surprise attack. Our hero then appears in front of the neighbor, who is shocked to see the mysterious figure. With his arm injured, the leader of the villain group screams in pain from the impact of the blow. The other group member gets scared, and a purple aura suddenly starts to appear in his hand. But our boy is faster and hits the blonde neighbor with his club, sending him flying. Now on the ground, the neighbor asks who he is, but our hero says he won't reveal his identity. Without wasting time, our protagonist finishes the guy off with a precise blow right to the face. With the last henchman in his hands, he realizes that the purple aura was what blocked the woman's vision. Without wasting time, our hero hits the guy with a club blow to finish the fight. After taking down the 3 of them, our protagonist takes a deep breath and seems very tired from the fight. Suddenly, Hoshi-san calls his name and shouts for him to watch out for a new attack. But before he could turn, the group leader throws him to the ground with a surprise attack. The man then charges with his bat, glowing in a red aura to attack our boy. The blow hits our hero's helmet squarely, and the visor shatters with the force of the impact. Our protagonist is shocked by the destructive power, and the leader recognizes him as Tsukiyama. The villain says he wanted to meet him, and our boy thinks it's unfair to have an attack trait at the beginning. With a wicked smile, the leader calls his henchmen to join him in the fight against our hero. The neighbor then gets up, and with an aura of lightning, says our protagonist was a nuisance. At that moment, we see Dingo running away, probably to get some help. Cornered, and with a broken helmet, our boy wonders if he should use his dimensional gate. The blonde neighbor then prepares his electric attack and charges at our hero with full force. He also warns not to go easy just because our protagonist is not an awakened like them. But suddenly, Dingo jumps and bites the neighbor's hand, who screams in pain from the pup's attack. Just then, Taiki arrives and asks what the heck is going on in broad daylight. The group leader then looks at our hero's friend and decides it's better to leave for today. As they walk away, the gym owner calls the guys kids who think they're tough. Hoshi-san then teleports to the ground and asks if our protagonist is okay after the fight. To be sure, Taiki takes out his phone and pretends to call the police to scare the guys off for good. The woman then approaches and asks if our boy got hurt during the combat with the villains. She points out that his helmet is cracked and our hero has a strange vision of the two. The girl says they need to go to the hospital, but our protagonist refuses because he doesn't have time. Our hero then wonders why the two look so much like his old friends from the game. He says goodbye because he has things to do, and the woman offers to take care of Dingo for him. Our boy then suggests that Hoshi-san join his friend's group since they are only 4. With that, our protagonist leaves with Dingo, and the pair wonders what got into him. Narration explains that there was a good reason for our hero to have run from that place. Back home, he moves up his schedule and starts construction to organize his thoughts. Looking at the pair, our hero felt he could tell them about his special ability, but he couldn't do that because to use his gate, he needs to level up faster than the others. The fight with those guys made him realize he needed far superior power and equipment while installing the chimney. He thinks that if he follows the plan, he will create a huge level gap. With that, the monsters that appear near him will be stronger, making it difficult to form a group. That's why he dedicated himself entirely to the work and didn't even notice it was already late at night. Finally, our boy finishes installing a fireplace in his hideout to keep warm. He is happy that Dingo also liked it, and now the pup can sleep warm and comfortable. The guy thinks that when the other equipment arrives, his hideout will be almost ready. Since he's come this far, he decides he will pull an all-nighter to get everything ahead of schedule. Suddenly, a news report on television catches his attention about the asteroid Mozambique. An expert named Thomas Chandler reveals that the asteroid has split into Alpha and Beta, but the expert claims there is no chance of the asteroid approaching Earth. The space agency explains that Jupiter's gravity caused the split and miscalculated. Our protagonist remembers that in the game, 5 days before the end, the Beta part fell near a Russian ship. Our hero thinks the story seems strange, but now everything finally makes sense to him. Another news report informs that the Prime Minister has not appeared in public for a whole week. With this, the opposition demands clarification and a questioning session for the politician. Suddenly, our protagonist realizes something important about the current situation of the entire country. He thinks the good side of this is that the media attention brings some unexpected benefits. With rumors about the end of the world and the awakened spreading, things begin to change. Because of this, it became much harder for ill-intentioned people to commit crimes freely. Our boy then decides to check the online community's reaction to all the events. He remembers that in the game, the ship was carried by a tsunami, and that's how zombies arrived in Japan. The guy notices there are many strong opinions, but overall, the reaction is the same as always. But suddenly, he sees a post from a user named My Dream and wonders if he is active. That was a famous player for being kind and helping all the newbies in the game Sura back in the day. In the forums, people discuss whether the end of the world is real and if Mozambique is the cause of it all. The player built a bunker and invites the 4 remaining players to join him at the end. Our protagonist remembers that this guy was someone they had contacted several times. As long as there is no news about the players meeting, he decides not to be the first to act. But as a precaution, our protagonist decides to save that player's post for the future. He feels so tired he could pass out, but the well-done job cheers him up a lot. The sight of his almost finished hideout really lifts his spirits. With a determined look, he knows the main event is about to begin from now on. With that, he prepares to open the gate and finally finish his secret base. The next day, after 2 sleepless nights, he finally finishes the job and celebrates. To test the new power system, our boy plugs his phone into the outlet with hope. With a shout of joy, he celebrates because the phone is charging perfectly. Our hero feels a wave of happiness, and for a good reason. He goes to a door. When he dug again where he found the stones, he found something very special and valuable. With his body trembling with excitement, he prepares because the time has finally come to use it. The guy then realizes that using solar power was much more complex than he imagined. He had to convert the current and go through several processes to be able to use the appliances. But with a big stretch, he celebrates having created a safe base in the other world. He then opens a safe and reveals that he discovered a mineral harder than obsidian. Inside the safe, our hero finds a bright green stone called emerus. With the stone in hand, he says he has no use for it now, but it's better than nothing. With that, he decides to install LED lights and store the food in the basement before sleeping. But suddenly, a strange noise catches his attention, and he shouts Dingo's name. Outside, the wolf pup growls furiously at some unknown threat. Worried, our protagonist runs out and asks what's happening with the pup. Suddenly, the guy guy is shocked by what he sees in front of him and can't believe it. With his knife in hand, he wonders why Highland monsters are there. He suspects that those monsters were responsible for what happened to Dingo's mother. With a shush sign, our hero tries to calm the pup, who is full of anger, but the little wolf doesn't listen and continues to growl at the enemies without stopping. A pack of Suar-type wolves then appears in front of them with a red leader. Surrounded by the monsters, he admits he has no way to defeat these creatures now. He knows that if he turns his back to grab weapons, he will be destroyed, and only one method remains. Our hero thinks his idea will work, because crested wolves are very cautious. Normally, the pack leader attacks first to test the strength of the enemy they encounter. Only after confirming it's safe do they launch a coordinated attack with the whole group. But with sweat dripping, he wonders what he would do if the monster attacked with everything at once. Suddenly, the guy has a brilliant idea, and a glint appears in his eye with the new strategy. His strategy is very simple and consists of driving away the leader, so the rest of the pack flees. In addition, he knows that wolves don't like strong smells, and this is a big advantage. Fortunately, our protagonist still has the pepper spray he used against the kobolds. With a determined look, he believes that if he hits the leader with the spray, he will be able to drive it away. But an arrow hits the ground, and the wolf easily dodges. Looking very annoyed by the attack, the creature then growls with smoke coming from its nostrils, and seems ready for combat. The monster then jumps with full force at our hero, who is shocked by the speed. In his mind, he screams that he needs to think of a way to stop the wolf's movement and use the spray. Our boy then clenches his fist because, in theory, there are no problems, and he just needs to execute the plan. With a battle cry, he charges because if he runs, his Hideout will be completely destroyed. The wolf then charges with full force, and our hero prepares for the impact with a determined look. With a focused face, he prepares to put his risky strategy into action immediately. He opens and closes the gate, quickly grabbing his pepper spray for the attack. The wolf falls to the ground and starts coughing and drooling, looking very sick from the portal's dizziness. But our protagonist knows the fight isn't over and advances with his knife for combat. One of the smaller wolves charges, but our boy throws it away with a quick movement. Exhausted, he sits down and says he thought he was going to go down while Dingo barks at him nonstop. He used the pepper spray on the wolf, which screamed in pain from the unexpected attack in mid-air. With that, our hero pets Dingo and asks him to wait just a little longer. The strategy was to open the gate in front of the monster so it would fall and be vulnerable to attack. Seizing the chance, he throws Dakhan's poison into the wolf's mouth to finish the fight. Now calmer, he pets Dingo and asks what happened with the pack. He promises Dingo that he will definitely avenge his mother. After cleaning up the basement, he goes to the pharmacy and hardware store to buy more things. The wolf pack then flees in fear, leaving the path clear for our protagonist. Yawning from sleepiness, our hero complains about the wolves that appeared at a really bad time, but he thinks it was good that it ended that way, because if it were a werewolf, he would already be a goner. Looking at the traffic light, he realizes he was very careless and didn't pay attention to his surroundings. While planning to expand the cultivation space, he spots his friend Taiki on the other side of the street. He thinks about digging trenches to strengthen the defenses, but his friend suddenly calls him. Our boy then understands that he was too focused on the monsters and forgot about other threats. That's why he decides he will use the drone to do more research and expand his territory. He also plans to add communication devices, but his friend calls him again. The friend asks what he's doing there, and our hero says he was doing some routine shopping. Our protagonist then realizes his friend is not alone and asks what he's doing there. The friend says it wasn't him who went to buy weapons, and remembers the Iron Death disease. With that, he introduces the woman and explains that she is a member of his gym. Our hero then deduces that his friend met the woman at the hardware store by chance. He asks if his friend was trying to stop them from buying weapons, and Taiki confirms. Our boy then asks if she saw the guide, but the woman says she doesn't believe in the disease. Suddenly, the woman asks why he is staring at her like that all the time. Our hero then remembers her and points at the woman with a smile on his face. The woman recognizes him as the owner of the Korean food restaurant and asks what happened. She apologizes for taking so long to greet him and takes out her business card to introduce herself. With that, she introduces herself as Shizuku Shiomi, and our hero also reveals his name to her. Our protagonist is then shocked because he didn't expect to meet a doctor there suddenly. After the introductions, our hero explains the basics of the game as he did with his friends, but the woman still seems not to believe it and says the whole story doesn't make much sense. She asks if there's no sense in a scientific approach, and our hero agrees with her. With that, the woman says she has one more question, and our protagonist tells her to ask. The doctor then asks if he isn't awakened, and our hero is shocked and speechless. Shocked, he looks at the card and confirms that the woman is indeed a doctor from a hospital. She explains that she felt it because he explained everything with great conviction conviction, and our hero denies it. The woman then asks if he really thinks so and says their conversation was much deeper. With a smile, she thanks him for the explanation, and our hero thinks he gave the same explanation to everyone. The doctor then calls our protagonist by his name and bows slightly as a sign of respect. She asks him to continue helping them with his valuable information. The next day, in his hideout, our hero admires his new spear with a smile. With the emer's tip, the weapon looks very legit, and he says his preparation is complete. He then calls Dingo, and the pup barks excitedly at his owner from across the room. With the pup in his arms, our protagonist says that today they will avenge his mother. He also warns that if anyone finds the hideout, they will have to deal with them. Fully equipped, he asks if Dingo understood and says he is counting on him for the mission. Hiding, he observes the wolves and realizes the pack leader is not there with the others. With his flashlight, he looks for clues and wonders if the monster ran away in fear. He knows that defeating a pack without a leader is much easier than with one. But as he gets closer, he sees only 4 wolves and wonders where the rest of the pack is. Without a leader, the monsters lose all coordination and act as if they have no brains. Suddenly, he sees an Olbeer eating the body of the wolf leader and understands everything. With this, he can lure the wolves one by one to defeat them more easily. With his trap, he manages to catch the first wolf in a net to facilitate the combat. Our boy then approaches and tells the creature not to be afraid because it won't suffer. With his new spear, he finishes the monster and gains 3 GP points for the easy victory. Seeing their friend fall, the other 3 wolves growl furiously and prepare attack with everything they've got. Unfazed, our protagonist advances with his spear to face the rest of the pack. The creatures then run towards him in a coordinated and furious attack. One of the wolves jumps from a rock for an aerial attack, trying to catch him by surprise. But our hero was expecting this and uses his pepper spray to blind the monster in mid-air. The spray ends up hitting the other wolves, who also get stunned by the unexpected attack. With the monsters blinded, our boy prepares to finish the fight once and for all. With a quick thrust of his spear, he hits the first wolf, which screams in pain from the impact. But one of the wolves recovers and lunges to bite our hero with its sharp fangs. Suddenly, Dingo appears and bites the larger wolf to help his owner in the difficult battle. With Dingo's help, he finishes the last wolf and gains another 3 GP points for the victory. With a dark look, he understands that the only way to deal with them is with full force. With the victory, he levels up to level 5 and gains more GP, but wonders about the additional effects. His ability now makes the gate invisible and allows him to see and hear through the portal. Our boy then tests the new function and opens the dimensional gate with a voice command. Seeing the result, he gets super excited and shouts that this is simply amazing. The portal is now invisible to other people, which is a great strategic advantage. He then confirms that he can see his own house through the portal and is amazed. Our hero understands the importance of leveling up and decides not to miss the next signs. But before that, he knows he has many other important things to do first. With that, he thinks he won't mistake his portal for a dungeon anymore and is very relieved. The guy reflects that if the skill evolved at level 5, it could improve even more in the future. After that, he confirms that there are no more dangerous monsters near his secret base. 2 days pass, and our boy uses this time to advance several of his plans. The first thing he does is use his drone to better investigate the forest of the otherworld. Near his hideout, he confirms that there are only a few types of normal animals. With everything checked, our protagonist decides that the first thing to do is to bury the wolves' bodies. With safety confirmed, our hero grabs his tools and says the work is about to begin. With that, he starts remodeling the hideout, clearing bushes and leveling the ground. Using the drone, he finds a goblin nest 3 kilometers away and decides not to get close. Meanwhile, in the real world, our protagonist gathers materials at a supply store. With Dingo's help, he draws a 30-meter circle to build a trench. He then installs 2 layers of barbed wire and plans to dig trenches outside. During the work, our boy keeps an eye on the news from the real world through the portal. In addition, he also bought a set of professional tools for his projects. Our hero then sees a post that says Survivor Number 1 has joined a group. He is shocked because he recognizes the nickname as that of his old friend from the game Sura. Our protagonist also rents a motorcycle and a mini excavator to use before the disease. He injects Dakhan's poison into his body to gain resistance and use it as a weapon. But even with all this, the guy panics in front of the computer for some reason. On the way back, he takes the opportunity to confirm the location of Itoda's group's base. With that, he remembers the shooting incident in the city and the government's censorship. He also wonders if the Prime Minister's situation has to do with Survivor Number 1. Our boy imagines she would ask for weapons and a shelter in exchange for her valuable information. information. With that, he thinks it's all a bluff, wonders why the player would do something like that. The guy is bothered by the situation but knows that thinking about it won't solve anything now. He deduces that she chose the Prime Minister to be able to make her demands. To be sure, our protagonist decides to act and prepares in front of the computer. Our hero then creates a new account and a virtual reality ID for his plan. With a serious look, he thinks he needs to change his plans if the news is true. With that, he sends an anonymous message and wonders if he will get a quick response. He then remembers that he suspected the player because she knew about the game's warning signs. Just when he thought it would take a while, the player replies and asks in surprise how he knows his ID. Our hero tells him to go to the White Room, and the guy accepts the invitation immediately. So, to find out the truth, he enters the virtual reality chat for the scheduled meeting. In the White Room, a man in a hat appears and thanks him for the invitation to talk. With a focused look, he confirms that the player has entered the room for the scheduled meeting. The man in the hat complains that he is a bit dissatisfied with the whole situation. Our hero, wearing a duck mask, apologizes and says there's nothing good in being hostile. The guy then asks if he is one of the hardcore players, and our boy replies with a maybe. With that, he decides to ask 3 questions, and if the guy gets them right, he will recognize him as a player. The first question is the maximum jump height of a werewolf, and he answers 3 meters. Next, he questions the weakness of the Olbeer, and the answer is a strong light. For the last question, he wants to know about the warning signs, but our boy refuses to answer. The man confirms that he is a hardcore player, and our protagonist calls him noisy. He asks the guy to call Survivor 1, saying he will join if it's true, but the man replies that unfortunately, he can't call her now, and our hero is confused. He changes the subject and asks about the stages of zombies, and our boy answers everything. Our protagonist then realizes the guy is just stalling for time with questions. Suddenly, a light goes on in his mind, and he understands what is really happening. The man in the hat talks about the weather and asks if our hero doesn't feel that something is about to happen. The guy then says goodbye, and our boy realizes his IP was being tracked the whole time. In an internet cave, a woman welcomes a group of suspicious-looking men in suits. The leader tells his men to watch the entrance, and they immediately agree with the order. The woman tries to mention the payment, but the man says they didn't come to play video games. He reveals they came to find someone, and the woman is very scared by the scene. In the bathroom, our protagonist opens the dimensional gate and flees before being caught by the group. The man then approaches a guy and asks if he can cooperate with their investigation. With a purple aura, he hypnotizes the employee so she will cooperate with their search. One of the henchmen gives a negative sign, and the leader realizes there is only one place left to look. Our boy then realizes that if he gets caught, he will become a puppet of that strange guy. He realizes it's a mental type ability and decides he needs to act very quickly. The leader approaches another guy and asks if he is anonymous, but the boy denies it. Scared, the man then says he has fought stealth monsters before and fills a bucket of water to use. He enters the bathroom, wondering if our hero is a stealth ability user. He greets Anonymous and tells him to stop playing around and come out of hiding. He throws the water on the floor to look for wet spots, swinging his arms randomly. With that, he says he will find the guy quickly and touches one of the stalls. The man then touches the portal, and our hero is relieved to have narrowly escaped. The leader then realizes it's not a stealth user and takes out his radio to give new orders. Now on the street, our protagonist thanks the player and applies Dakhan's poison to his spear. The leader reports that the guy has a mobility ability and tells his men to search. Our hero thinks that thanks to the player, he has finally made his decision on what to do. The man then wonders who among the hardcore players is the real Anonymous. Even if the guy has a mobility trait, he doesn't believe he has escaped. Based on his judgment, our protagonist appears with his spear, ready for the fight. The leader believes that if he is an experienced player, he will have some weapon for combat. With a determined look, our hero says he will repay injustice with more injustice. The man then laments that the person he thought was kind is actually a villain in real life. With his spear, our protagonist appears, and the leader says he must have something else. Our boy then attacks and hits the man's leg, who falls to the ground, not understanding anything. The spear pierces the leader's leg, and the poison quickly spreads through his body. The poison leader asks if he is anonymous, and our hero just greets him back. With that, our boy slams the man's face into the wall and asks who gave him permission to turn. He questions how the poison spreading through the defeated villain's body feels. The man tries to curse, but our protagonist warns him not to talk much for his own good. He then draws his knife and says that the apocalypse and the tutorial haven't really started yet. The leader then pulls out a gun, and our hero remembers that the PK system has not been released. The man drops the gun, and our boy says that semi-hardcore players understand quickly. Lying on the ground, the leader doesn't move, and our hero warns what happens to those who use the player's name. The villain then gets furious and curses our protagonist with all his remaining strength. Our boy sits on the man and says that now he looks more like a hunting monster than a human. With that, he takes the guy's wallet and gun as the price for trying to enslave him with his power. He then points the gun at the man and warns that next time, he will finish him for real. Our hero also explains that if he takes him out now, there will be no disadvantage for him in the game. With the document in hand, he finds out the guy's name is Junji Kajira, and he is 37 years old. Before the henchmen arrive, he flees home and returns to the other world to check the identity. After checking the phone, he realizes that was all the useful information he got, but the idea that more game time means stronger traits seems wrong to him. He finds out the guy owns a golf course and has 3 bunkers in a romantic history, believing that he was testing how powerful his mental domination ability was. For now, our hero will keep this hypothesis as a maybe until he confirms the traits of others. Our boy thinks his trait might be cheat level and limited to hardcore players. Suddenly, he hears several alarms and wonders why the noise is so loud. He peeks through the portal and sees his television with several news alerts flashing on the screen. With that, our protagonist grabs the gun because there is only one clear thing to do now. He knows the bullets are limited, so he will practice without the magazine next time. With an apocalypse similar to the game approaching, he knows there is only one thing to do. The guy then approaches the portal to check the news but seems very confused. The news shows that a monster has appeared on the mountain and an ogre has also been seen there. With a determined look, our hero realizes that the second warning sign has finally begun. With that, his physical abilities have increased and his training with the weapon has yielded great results. Our hero drives at high speed on the dark road of Otaji Mountain. The clock shows 10:30 at night, and he complains that the road is very long and distant. Our protagonist then wonders why of all places. The event was on Otaji Mountain. On his phone, he sees that the last place the goblins were seen was near a dam. With a determined look, he floors it to get there as quickly as possible. Now on the mountain, our boy parks the car in a hidden spot so as not to be seen. With Dingo by his side, he says they are going to look for the goblins, and the pup barks. He deduces that the diurnal goblins would make a temporary nest under the command of a hobgoblin. With that, he calls Dingo, and the pup seems very excited to start the search mission. Our hero then asks if Dingo can smell the goblins, and the pup barks. The pup sniffs the ground and seems to smell a strong scent coming from somewhere nearby. Our protagonist went up the mountain for 2 reasons, and the first is that the police are there. The little wolf then starts running through the forest, following the trail it found. With that, Dingo follows the scent at high speed, seeming to have found a clue. Suddenly, the pup stops and barks at the top of a tree, and our boy asks what's wrong. He then sees something and throws himself to the ground to avoid being hit by an attack. Lying on the ground, our hero calls for Dingo and seems very confused about what happened. He then finds a fallen police officer and tries to calm him down as the man seems to be trembling. With his hand on the man's chest, he is relieved because the officer is still alive somehow. With that, our protagonist looks for a better path and Dingo follows him, barking. Looking to the side, he finds several police officers and goblins lying on the forest floor. Shocked by the scene, he tries to understand the situation, but already has a suspicion of what happened. The officer has no obvious injuries, so he deduces the cause as a paralysis poison. He wonders if the officer's weapon was stolen or if he wasn't even armed. With that, our boy says that if the officer rests for 30 minutes, he will be fine. After helping the man, our hero approaches to check the bodies of the goblins on the ground. Looking at the fallen officer, he realizes he needs to hurry to resolve the situation. He wonders who shot the monsters because there seem to be no weapons nearby. Our boy then notices traces of shots on the back of one of the goblins and understands everything. Suddenly, a golden goblin with a crown appears, and our hero is shocked by the scene. With that, he takes the officer's phone and calls for an ambulance to ask for help. The guy then communicates the officer's location and leaves a note asking them to bury the goblins. With the news of the monsters spreading, he judges it impossible to hide the truth any longer. With that, our hero tells Dingo that from now on, it's a race against time. Elsewhere, a man is hit by a strong blow and falls to the ground with the impact. He screams in pain as a goblin attacks him with a wooden club. One of his partners asks if he is sure of what he is doing, and the man seems confident. He asks if his partner questions him being the tank because he is not an awakened. The guy reveals that his trait is telekinesis and that it takes a while to activate. But with the ability activated, he launches several stones against a hobgoblin with full force. The stones then hit the monster squarely, and the man promises to provide cover for his partner. The partner then asks if the other members are coming, but the man says they have already arrived. But he explains that the others can't climb the mountain because of the police at the location. The partner is shocked and says they should flee, but the man sees it as a chance. He then faces the goblins and prepares for combat against the forest creatures. The man realizes that the goblins don't have the paralysis poison or the spears from the game. He tells his partner not to panic because they can win the fight. If they defeat the goblins and the hobgoblin, they will have an overwhelming advantage over the others. He then tells his partner to stop complaining, but suddenly he is hit by an attack with the goblins on the ground. The partner asks what they should do in that situation. The man is then hit in the head by a stone and complains about the pain of the precise blow. From a distance, our protagonist wonders if his intervention was unnecessary for the fight. An energy arrow then hits a goblin's head, which is shocked by the attack. The partner asks if the leader is okay, and the man wonders how the goblins saw through their strategy. More energy arrows hit the monsters, who scream in pain from the precise attacks. The remaining goblins charge at the pair, who prepare for close combat. Our boy then says he just paid a fair price for their actions in that fight. The man is shocked to see the monsters falling, and one of them gets taken out with an arrow to the head. The guy then wonders where the arrows came from, and looks into the darkness of the forest. Our hero observes everything from a distance and learns that the awakened cannot climb the mountain. With a few monsters less, the fight against the horde becomes much easier to win. Our hero then grabs a can of soda and prepares for a very quick battle. All this is part of the strategy our protagonist planned to defeat the goblins. The first step is to get the monsters' attention by throwing a stone at one of them. With that, the furious creature approaches the invisible dimensional gate he created. Suddenly, a spear goes through the portal and hits the curious monster squarely in the chest. The goal is to cause a lot of pain so that the creature's scream attracts the others to the trap. He then uses the gate as a wall to be able to attack the monsters in complete safety. After finishing the monster, he pulls back the spear so as not to leave any trace of the attack. The hobgoblin, with its high cognition, realizes that something is very wrong. He sees one of his subordinates down and is confused, not understanding what happened. Angrily, the big boss sends the remaining 3 goblins to investigate what's going on. The little monsters then approach with great fear and anxiety about the whole situation. Our boy then repeats the same plan and prepares to attack the creatures again. With a single blow, he finishes the monsters and celebrates that everything went as planned. Our protagonist prepares for the battle and says he just needs to defeat the last 2 enemies. But suddenly, he notices something strange and wonders what the heck is happening. He is shocked to see that the hobgoblin and the pair of awakened are acting separately. With no other choice, our hero charges with his knife to face the giant monster. The guy admits that his plan is reckless, but he can't let this chance slip away. Our boy's weapon then clashes with the monster's club in a very violent impact. With the force of the blow, our protagonist is thrown against a tree and screams in pain. Lying on the ground, he realizes the damage was greater than he expected as the monster laughs at him. The creature then raises its weapon for the final blow, and our hero fears he will pass out right there. Suddenly, a red energy attack appears and hits the hobgoblin with full force. A system window informs him that his survival instinct skill has been activated, and his eyes glow. The hobgoblin turns furiously, its red eyes glowing with pure rage against our hero. With the power of the skill, our protagonist moves at high speed to dodge the attack. Our hero then points his weapon, and with his glowing eyes, prepares for the counter-attack. He fires a green liquid at the golden goblin, opening his dimensional gate to escape. With the urgent job done, our hero grabs the monster's bag and enters the dimensional portal. But the hobgoblin gets up furiously and charges at our boy with its club. Our protagonist then fires his weapon, and the poison hits the monster with several shots. The creature screams in pain, and the guy asks if it thought it would win with just one blow. With his shining sword, our hero says it's now his turn to attack with full force. The hobgoblin then lets out its last cry of agony before finally being defeated for good. With the victory, our boy levels up to level 6 and gains a new terrain perception skill. The new ability allows him to understand the terrain, and our hero celebrates his luck. His gloves then glow and turn into an item, but he realizes the police search is getting closer. With a determined look, our protagonist says he has already gotten what he wanted and is leaving. He decides he will stay in his hideout until the police search is finally over. With that, our hero opens the dimensional gate and prepares to enter his hideout. The next day, he wakes up all bandaged up, with Dingo licking his face worriedly. Our protagonist looks at the clock and complains because he ended up wasting a whole day. Because of this, he decides he will no longer activate his skill unless it's necessary. Before leaving, our hero decides he will check the spoils from the battle against the monsters. Looking at the items on the table, he celebrates because, as expected, the golden goblins are very different. The guy finds the revolver good, but his attention turns turns to a much more interesting dagger. He picks up the mithril knife, which is immune to the iron death disease, and is happy. Our protagonist finds it strange for a goblin to have an item worth 100 GP points in the shop. Looking closely, he notices the weapon's surface is irregular and becomes very suspicious. Suddenly, a light goes on in his mind, and he realizes something very important about the monsters. Our boy then remembers that the goblins from the other world had iron weapons, which is strange. He wonders if some kind of mutation occurred with the creatures of that world, but he thinks this theory is a bit exaggerated and decides to let it go. The guy then says he will find out the truth later, and goes back to checking the items he got. Suddenly, he finds dark grapes that increase his vision in the dark and gets excited. Our hero finally understands how the diurnal goblins could fight at night. Lastly, he opens his status window and realizes his growth speed is much faster. With everything checked in the other world, our boy decides that for now, he will go home. Back in the real world, our hero is amazed by the number of emails he suddenly received. He sees messages from his friends and wonders if he has finally become popular with the girls. The guy decides he will first go to his friend Taiki's gym. The scene then shows us the facade of our protagonist's friend's gym, Kurokawa Fitness. At the gym, our boy calls for his friend, but is surprised by an excited shout. Hoshi-san and Taiki then run towards him, and his friend asks if he knows how worried he was. The gym owner introduces the new members of his survival group to our hero. The pair then introduce themselves as Shota Matsumoto and Meiku Shibasaki, and our boy does the same. Our protagonist asks if the group has 5 people, and his friend says the other member left. With a smile, Hoshi-san says the other member went to a camping store that opened nearby. Suddenly, the gym owner asks if our hero saw the news about yesterday's incident. Our boy then confirms that he watched everything and is up to date with the latest events. The news said that the doctor who dissected the goblin warned everyone to prepare for the apocalypse. Because of this, the Prime Minister called the National Security Council for a meeting. With that, the government announced that it will look for the game's creator and interrogate the awakened. The gym owner asks what our hero plans to do, and the guy questions what about. With that, the friend asks for advice, because our protagonist seems to be well informed about everything. But the new group member says they will only get GP by defeating goblins anyway. Besides, he thinks the group just needs to keep stocking up on supplies as they always have. Our protagonist then calls the guy Matsumoto and asks if he has ever played Survival Life. The guy replies no, but if you look at the community, our hero says that's the problem. With a serious face, our boy warns the guy not to blindly believe the online community. Suddenly, the girl Miku asks what the difference is between who turns into a zombie and who doesn't. Matsumoto then says that whoever had contact with the awakened is safe, and she is amazed. With that, he stands up and with a determined look, asks why she thinks he awakened. He reveals that he awakened because he was a Suara player and therefore had contact with the system. The friend then falls silent and the girl celebrates because now she knows she won't turn into a zombie. She says she will follow Matsumoto, and he says that if she believes in him, she will be fine. Suddenly, Hoshi-san calls the guy and asks how he managed to pass the game's tutorial. The guy promises to protect everyone, and our hero wonders what the heck he is up to. With a serious look, our protagonist thinks there is no basis for the theory of the awakened. With a sigh, the guy realizes the whole situation is becoming very problematic. He understands that his friend called him because he also doesn't trust that new guy. With that, our hero decides he will retreat for now, and his friend asks if he is leaving already. The guy says he has plans and that he will contact his friend later. After leaving the gym, our boy reviews his plans and adds the equipment store. But when he gets home, he finds the Dr. Shizuku Shiomi waiting for him at the door. The woman says she has something to give him, and our hero is a bit confused by the situation. She then hands him a first aid kit with painkillers and antibiotics. Our protagonist asks if he can really keep it, and the woman says yes, no problem. She even reveals her address, and our boy doesn't understand the reason for all this. The doctor then gets annoyed and says they need to know where the other lives to help each other. With that, she says goodbye, and our hero thanks her for the gift and tells her to take care. Suddenly, the woman calls him and turns her face, so as not to face our protagonist. She warns that she will charge for the medicine, asking him to remember her address. As the woman walks away, our hero thinks she is like an unexpected typhoon in his life. After the meeting with the doctor, time flew by, and our boy bought a lot of equipment. With that, he built a warehouse in the other world and organized all his luggage for the end. Our protagonist then used his money excavator to dig trenches in his spare time. Meanwhile, the world gradually accelerated towards chaos with several demonstrations. On television, several experts discussed heatedly about the end of the world. An emergency meeting was held at the UN, and the American president visited Japan. Suddenly, the space agency announced that its predictions were wrong, and chaos ensued. The news revealed that the Alpha asteroid was also heading towards Earth, to everyone's despair. 4 days later, our hero visits the port where the Russian ship event will happen. After confirming there was no one at the port, he entered an abandoned building to prepare. With that, our protagonist opens his dimensional gate and prepares for his new mission. The reason he went there was to get the weapons from the arriving Russian ship. The narration explains that the zombie spores are highly permeable and dangerous pathogens. With that, our hero thinks that for someone without a family, it makes no difference to turn into a zombie now, or in 5 days. He could live in the other world with Dingo, but he doesn't think that would make sense. With a determined look, our protagonist wonders what meaning a life like that would have. With his boat prepared, he says he has no intention of going down there and will fight to survive. He knows his choice is different from others and that the risk is high, but so is the reward. With his phone in hand, our boy thinks that in the end, life is just like that, full of risks. Reading the patch notes, he sees that the zombie's HP has been reduced and the starting weapon gives 10 GP. With that, he thinks the game administrators expect the real world to actually end. Suddenly, his eye glows red, and he realizes the event has finally begun for real. A news report announces that the fall of the Beta asteroid has been confirmed, and the third warning sign has begun. With that, a giant wave forms and starts moving towards the city with great force. The wave then sweeps away everything in its path, and a gigantic ship appears in the middle of the chaos. The Russian ship is thrown into the air by the force of the wave, looking like it will capsize. Our protagonist is shocked by the scene, and cannot believe what his eyes are seeing. With his binoculars, he observes the Russian ship and finally understands how it got there. Our hero knows that even if the ship wasn't hit, the spores have already contaminated it. With a determined look, he says that anyway, he needs to move fast. With that, the guy prepares and pushes his inflatable boat to start his risky mission. Our protagonist then runs as fast as he can to reach his objective in time. Before the government arrives, he jumps into the water to do everything he planned. In the water, our boy pilots his boat at high speed towards the gigantic Russian ship. Reaching the ship, he ties a rope and celebrates because so far, everything has gone as planned. But with a thoughtful look, our protagonist seems to be very worried about something else. Looking at the spores, he realizes that as Matsumoto predicted, the awakened do not turn into zombies. Our hero then checks his body and realizes he feels no discomfort from the spores. With that, he celebrates his luck and starts climbing the ship for the next phase of the plan. On the deck, our boy finds 2 zombies who seem to be the ship's sailors. The creatures then turn to him, and our hero calls the zombies to combat. With a club and a shield, he says he was looking forward to finally meeting these creatures. The narration explains that the game's zombies do not transmit the virus and see everything as food. In addition, the more nutrition they absorb, the stronger the creatures become in the end. With a precise blow, our hero hits the zombie's head and says they are scary. He then tells the zombies to clench their teeth and prepares to attack with his club. With a spinning blow, our protagonist hits the 2 zombies with a bluish aura. With the monsters defeated, he realizes the zombies were heavily nerfed in the update. With the victory, our boy gains 4 GP points and thinks that in a normal fight, it would be different. Even so, he knows he needs to avoid being careless as in the fight against the Red Orc. With the name of a hardcore player, he knows he cannot make the same mistake twice. Suddenly, the guy is startled and realizes the inside of the ship is full of zombies. Seeing the creatures everywhere, he says the place is crawling with monsters. With that, our hero decides he will first take care of the monsters in the hallway. Our protagonist then defeats the zombies and gains more GP. Wondering where he can find a weapon, he runs to the helm house to look for the weapon he so desperately needs to survive. But suddenly, he hears gunshots and wonders if there are still any survivors on the ship. This means that even a normal person can survive if they are lucky against the spores. With that in mind, he runs to rescue the survivor and get valuable information. Arriving in the room, our hero laments that he arrived too late to save the survivor. He finds a blood-stained photo and realizes the man was trying to protect someone. With that, our protagonist understands that the couple took their own lives to avoid becoming zombies. With little comfort, our boy closes the man's eyes in a gesture of respect and mourning. He then thanks him for everything and takes the weapon case the survivor left behind. Our hero says goodbye and lets the man rest in peace beside his beloved. With the case in hand, he continues his exploration of the ship in search of more items. The guy thinks that when the end of the world comes, this kind of thing will happen all the time. And of course, our protagonist also knows that many bad things will happen from now on. With that in mind, he knows that people will fight to survive at any cost. But suddenly, he sees another boat and wonders if it's another lunatic looking for items. The other boat approaches quickly, and our protagonist is on alert with the situation. The other survivor seems to be as equipped as he is, which makes him very suspicious. Seeing the other guy leave, he realizes that everyone is desperate to survive. With a serious look, our hero decides that this will be the last time he will be nice. On the morning of the 5th day, our hero sighs because the end is getting closer. Reading the news, he sees that the government is looking for the game's developer and decides to act. Seeing the Prime Minister's actions, our protagonist realizes he needs to do something. He understands that the politician is thinking the same way as him and decides to help. With that, our hero takes out his phone to call the task force and pass on some information. On the other end of the line, a man answers, and our boy reveals that he knows the exact date of the end of the world. The man asks him to disable call blocking, but our hero talks about the goblin. The operator is shocked by the information and wonders if the caller is who he thinks he is. Our protagonist then says he will only say it once, and the man prepares to write everything down. With that, our hero reveals that the exact date of the apocalypse is July 20th at 1 p.m. He warns that a package will arrive there today, and the man is very confused by the information. With a serious look, our boy asks them to make good use of what they will receive soon. The narration praises the Prime Minister's decision, which was very impressive for the situation. With his phone in hand, our hero sees people talking about the self-defense forces and the blackout, but he knows that social media information is not exactly very reliable. Suddenly, an army car stops in the street and warns everyone to stock up on food and water. The soldier repeats for anyone outside to go home, because the situation is very serious. Our hero observes everything from the window and praises the government's impeccable and swift response. Angrily, he clenches his fist and regrets not having risked exposing his ability from the beginning. But our boy knows that even so, there are disasters that simply cannot be stopped. Looking at the moon, he remembers that he needs to recall what he resolved on that very important day. Our protagonist then remembers that he is not a hero, but just an ordinary person in the end. With the lockdown, he spent all his time in the other world building his secret base. With 3 days to go, he was digging trenches, but the work was still going to take time. The guy then took the opportunity to organize his videos on cooking and agriculture on hard drives. With only 2 days left until the apocalypse, he went out to explore the forest with Dingo. Suddenly, he finds a sun apple and thinks that the forest has been magically enriched. But the day before the end of the world, our hero realizes a very strange problem has arisen. In his stock, he notices that 2 sweet potato jellies have simply disappeared from the shelf. Our protagonist then finds a dried grape on the floor and wonders what it is. He asks Dingo if he ate the jelly, and the pup acts all weird. He warns that the pup's nose will grow if he lies, and Dingo throws himself on the floor, whining. With this reaction, the guy concludes that it probably wasn't the pup who was the culprit. Dingo then barks nonstop, and our hero understands that he wants him to check the security camera. With that, our boy goes to the computer to watch the recording and get proof once and for all, but upon seeing the recording, he has a look of shock, not believing what is happening. The security camera shows 3 beetles entering through a small crack in the shelter's wall. To his surprise, it was the beetles that ate the jelly, and the grape was their payment. He then wonders if the creatures have high intelligence, because the situation is very strange. Our hero puts his hand on his head because he wanted to check this, but he has other things to do. So the first thing he decides to do is to plug the hole so the bugs can't get in anymore. Since he has visitors today, our boy opens the dimensional gate and thanks everyone for coming. Our protagonist thanks everyone for gathering there despite the complicated situation. He asks Takei about the new guy, and his friend says he brought him to introduce him. With that, the guy formally introduces himself to the group as Yudo Date and seems very nervous. The guy says he is also an awakened, but deleted the game, and has a degree in electrical engineering. With that, our hero introduces himself as a non-awakened and shakes the newcomer's hand. Our protagonist then says that since time is short, they should share what they know. He asks his friend Taiki to start, and the strong man is a bit surprised by the request. With that, the friend says he was on the phone with his ex-wife when the line suddenly dropped. Worried about his daughter, he went to their house to see if they were both okay and safe, but on his way back home, he ran into a very big problem in the middle of the road. The highway he took was completely blocked by the country's self-defense forces. The gym owner found out they were evacuating people who live near an oil complex. The doctor says she went with her group members and got some very important information. The woman then reveals to everyone that they have built an emergency shelter in the city park. The friend is shocked by the news, and the doctor says she didn't believe it either when she saw the shelter. Next, Hoshi-san says she overheard a conversation while shopping with the new guy. Apparently, the bureaucrats who oppose the Prime Minister's decision are being arrested. Our hero then thinks that the information they got is much better than he expected. The narration explains that the reason he knows everything and still asks is so that the others will accept the truth. He thinks he needs a reason for everyone to believe in. Can't just say he's a hardcore player. Remembering his friends, he asks the group not to freak out and just listen carefully to what he has to say. With that, he reveals that the Prime Minister wants an orderly apocalypse, and everyone is shocked. The guy then questions if they don't find it strange that control began on July 16th. He continues, saying that for 4 days, all state facilities were closed by the government. The newcomer then wonders if the apocalypse is about to arrive, and the doctor nods in agreement. agreement. Our hero says the government knew the date, so the end will be when the restrictions are lifted. With that, the newcomer despairs and shouts that he needs to be with his family at such an important moment, but Hoshi-san holds him back, and our hero warns that their safety comes first. The narration then begins to say that any of them could end up transforming soon, and that by the next day, they could end up becoming a zombie, and everyone is very scared by the news. Our protagonist says that now, he will start the main topic, and takes some envelopes from the table. The reason for the meeting was to share tutorial information and knowledge about Sura. The friend asks how he knows this, and the guy says he watched Noramaki's live streams to get informed. Our protagonist then apologizes to Hoshi-san, and the woman says she also hid things. With that, she hugs the envelope, and our hero says she can use the information as she wishes. But the guy warns that in the tutorial, they must follow the manual he prepared for the group. With the end of the meeting, the date changes, and our boy stays on the roof with Dingo to reflect. In these 32 days, he prepared a lot, but he knows he is still far from perfect. With a punch in the air, he thinks he focused only on his survival, and that might come back to bite him. Even so, our hero has no regrets and is ready for whatever comes. Suddenly, several missiles are launched into the sky, seeming to be the beginning of the end of the world. A large explosion then happens in the sky, and our protagonist seems a bit annoyed. With his binoculars, our boy observes everything and says the apocalypse has finally begun. With that, he realizes he can't avoid it, and the end of the world has finally arrived for real. As soon as dawn broke, the lockdown finally ended, and the guy finished his preparations. During this time, he reinforced his house with bulletproof glass and a wooden door. Following his morning routine, our protagonist injects a small dose of poison into his arm. Next, he forces himself to do 300 push-ups to increase his resistance to poisons. Now prepared for the worst, our hero puts on his combat gear to protect himself. He has breakfast with his partner Dingo, who eats a piece of chicken. With everything ready, the pair anxiously awaits 9 in the morning, which is the promised time. Suddenly, the lights turn on, and our protagonist realizes the moment has finally arrived. Dingo then wakes up startled by the noise of the television that suddenly turned on in the living room. A statement from President Jang Won take begins, and he introduces himself to the entire nation. The politician recalls that he declared martial law and that the army took control of everything. Our boy is impressed with how orderly this apocalypse was being organized. With the remote in hand, he turns off the TV in layman's, hoping the end wouldn't come. But since it has arrived, he stands up determined and says that now he must survive at all costs. Our protagonist then grabs his sledgehammer and prepares for the end like a veteran. With 4 hours to go, Taiga checks his warehouse in the other world and organizes everything. As expected, the real world turned into a true hell on earth with total chaos. People fight tooth and nail for survival on the city streets in desperation, but there were also those who took advantage of the situation to unleash their repressed desires. The shirtless man shouts that since everyone is going to perish, he will do whatever he wants. Suddenly, he is hit by a car, and the narration says there are people who take lives without guilt. The driver then complains and asks why the guy was standing in the middle of the road. One of the guys says that since they can't use the car after the plague, it's better to prevent bad luck. At that, the guy in the cap points to our protagonist on the roof and calls him a loser. The guy even threatens him and says that if he turns into a zombie, he will turn him into GP points. Our protagonist is confused by the declaration of war and wonders what that was all about. Suddenly, government planes drop pamphlets, and our hero praises their care for the people. He then picks up one of the pamphlets and sees that the paper shows the location of the government shelters. With that, he thinks that if there were more people like that, the apocalypse would be more bearable. But he knows that human nature is different, and that things are not so simple. With his sledgehammer in hand, Taika wonders if he should prepare again for what is to come. With 3 minutes to go, he finishes checking everything and prepares to leave with his motorcycle. The guy questions if his equipment will be enough to use before the metal plague. Our protagonist then reviews the route he memorized to collect items around the city. He looks at his watch, worrying if he forgot to remove any metal items before the plague. With a sigh, our hero thinks he is acting with exaggerated security paranoia. The guy then puts on his helmet because he has done everything he could, and now it's 1 in the afternoon. From now on, our protagonist knows he can only pray that everything goes as planned. With that, he starts his motorcycle and sets off on his mission as the spores arrive in South Korea. On the streets, a man screams for help as he is surrounded by people who have turned into zombies. The transformation is painful, and the man screams in agony as he is infected by the spores. Several people then begin to writhe on the ground, transforming into zombies with red eyes. The new creatures then scream with their glowing eyes, ready to hunt their first victims. Our boy rides his motorcycle through the streets and observes the new zombies that have appeared. He notices that the number of zombies is much smaller than he expected and continues on his way. With this, he understands that most people did not leave their homes for the apocalypse. Our protagonist then sees a family that has turned into zombies and is very disgusted disgusted by the scene. Looking in the rearview mirror, he realizes there are still people who have not turned into zombies. Our hero then accelerates and thinks that for now, it's better if things stay this way. He continues riding at high speed through the empty streets of the apocalyptic city. The guy thinks that while he collects items, the survivors would only get in the way of his plan. Arriving at a pharmacy, he celebrates his luck because the glass door is not locked. Without wasting time, our boy uses his sledgehammer and breaks the pharmacy door with one blow. Once inside, he opens his dimensional gate to start collecting supplies. With that, he knows he needs to move fast and starts grabbing all the items he can find. The guy then grabs several medicines because the spores take a while to dominate the zombies. If he loots everything in this time, he can avoid unnecessary fights and stock up on many items. On the other side of the portal, Dingo is confused, watching items fall from the dimensional portal. Suddenly, a mountain of medicines falls on the pup, who gets buried under the items. With the pharmacy empty, he checks his watch and wonders if he can keep up this pace. He thinks that maybe he can finish everything much faster than expected, but upon arriving at the next location, he realizes he spoke too soon and that it won't be so easy. Our protagonist then faces a double locked door and questions if this is for real. He says he was expecting something like this and takes an oxygen cylinder from his back. With that, Tsukiyama reveals that he also brought an oxygen cutter for these emergencies, but upon turning on the tool, he realizes it is much louder than he thought. With a worried look, he thinks that even with reduced tracking, this is a great danger. Suddenly, several zombies approach him from behind. Attracted by the loud sound of the tool, our hero then realizes that the cute zombies are coming towards him, ready to attack. He remembers seeing similar zombies during the Russian ship incident. Our protagonist knows that the initial zombies are weak because they haven't fed yet. With that, he realizes that the nerf they received has left them at a very low power level, so any newbie can easily handle them if they know their weak points. Without wasting time, Taiga charges and hits the zombies with his sledgehammer without any mercy. Reality seems to have a much lower difficulty than the game, which is a great advantage. With that, our protagonist gains 2 points for each zombie he defeats on the street. Even with this ease, he wonders what he should do with the rest of the zombies. Normally, the standard tactic would be to lure them into an alley and eliminate them one by one, but at the moment, he can't leave because he is busy opening the pharmacy door. Our hero then thinks that since he has the oxygen cutter with him, he can use it. He decides he will take them all down at once without running away. Our protagonist then warns that he was only avoiding the zombies to not waste time. He didn't want to waste his precious collection time, having to fight them now. With a precise blow, he hits the zombie right in the face, showing his strength. He states that he wasn't avoiding the fight out of fear, attacking the zombies without hesitation. Even surrounded by the creatures, our protagonist remains calm and prepared to fight. The guy then steps back and asks the zombies to think more carefully about this. Our hero says that someone with 5,500 hours of gameplay wouldn't lose, and would never be defeated by zombies that aren't even reinforced or goals. To make matters worse for them, the creatures weren't even in a large group. After finishing them all, Taiga admits that it was actually fun to fight a little. With the zombies on the ground, he lights his torch to finally open the shop door. Our protagonist then says he will send them all to the other side with a bang. After the fight, he finishes looting the hardware store and goes to the police station. Arriving there, he realizes the armory has already been looted and wonders if he arrived too late. But before getting disappointed, he sees several bodies scattered around the parking lot. Among the fallen, the guy finds a body that was carrying a large bag. Our protagonist then gets excited because he might have found something very valuable. Inside the bag, he finds everything he wanted, including weapons and a lot of ammunition to use. The moment he moved to the 4th collection point, he sped up his motorcycle. The zombies that slowly began to gather followed him through the city streets. Even with the pursuit, our protagonist did not worry about the creatures behind him. His perception and dexterity had greatly increased because of the items he had obtained. Along with his terrain ability from the hobgoblin, he managed to avoid them all easily. Arriving at the motorcycle shop, he laments that it seems everyone had the same idea. Our hero then stores the remaining ATV and various other goods in his portal. With that, Taiga checks his status in the other world to see his current attributes. He also takes the opportunity to rest a bit and clear any negative effects he had. Shortly after, the guy returns to the real world, ready to continue his collection mission. As he was about to go back to collecting supplies, he notices something strange. Suddenly, 2 guys on a motorcycle with a sidecar appear in front of our hero. The man in the sidecar shouts that if he hadn't awakened, he should have stayed home. He asks if our protagonist knows how long they have been looking for him. Without warning, the man launches a powerful electric attack towards our protagonist. Our protagonist dodges the attack and thinks the guy's obsession is an exaggeration. Not knowing what to do, he decides to open his dimensional portal to reposition himself. The aggressor tells his friend to watch the zombies and says that finishing off the guy will be easy. He kicks the air, asking if our hero is ready for his end. The guy says he won't be punished by the system, but realizes our protagonist protagonist has disappeared. The blonde guy wonders where he went and thinks that the first takedown is just a warning. Even so, he has a bad feeling and questions what happened. Suddenly, the aggressor wonders if he can do whatever he wants with people in reality. Just then, Taiga appears from behind and grabs him, shocking the guy with his appearance. Our protagonist then asks why they attacked him, and the blonde guy answers angrily. He says our hero took something that was theirs, starting to talk nonsense. Before he finishes the sentence, our protagonist hits him with a punch right in the stomach. Lying on the ground, the aggressor hears our hero, giving him one last chance to redeem himself. Taiga asks him to stop hurting innocent people, but the guy scoffs and calls him a looter. The aggressor then claims they are the same and grabs a weapon to continue the fight. He calls him selfish trash and attacks with his weapon, full of anger and hatred, but the blow hits our hero's helmet and causes no damage to him. Taiga then agrees with the guy and says that honestly, he is right about that. He thanks him because now his mind is clear, and he knows he is trash like the aggressor. The blonde guy panics and begs for his life with a face of pure desperation. Our protagonist thinks that deep down, he didn't want to admit the truth to himself. Even after playing over 100 death matches, he receives 50 points for the victory. With his hands on his face, he realizes that taking a life is much dirtier than he imagined. Suddenly, the guy's friend shouts his name, and our hero calls him skinny and stares at him. Taiga then warns that even if he is trash, the guy should be careful with him. The guy is surrounded by zombies, and the narration talks about people who only think of themselves. Just then, the creatures attack the man, who screams for help as he is devoured by them. Desperate, he begs for help, but our protagonist just watches from a distance. Slowly, the guy's hand falls to the ground lifeless, and hope finally ends. Our hero then thinks that people like them deserve their end in this new apocalypse. The narration then explains how the PK system worked within the game. The intention was good and aimed to reduce trolls, but the execution was a mess. The first takedown only generated a warning, because the creators were afraid of losing users, but from the third takedown, there was no escape, and you earned the title. For the second takedown, the system judged how much you were involved in the demise. People became PKers to get points and steal others' abilities. And also, because of an update that happened a week before the game shut down, it added new special abilities that were very strong. The problem is that being a PKer forced you to keep taking out others forever. A death field was activated to force a fight to the end between players. If 3 or more people gathered, a magical barrier was summoned on the spot. Inside, they were forced to fight in a deathmatch until only one was left. At first, this was an advantage for the PKer, but in the end, it became a problem. Once you became a PKer, your fate was completely sealed. Our protagonist then realizes that his heart does not have the beat of a PKer. With that, Taiga realizes that the PK system has not been activated because the tutorial has not started. This means that for a few hours, he can eliminate people without suffering the consequences, but our protagonist remembers that this is not a game and that he must also be crazy. So he decides to stop thinking nonsense and resolves to follow the plan he had already laid out. Our hero then says that his iron rule remains the same as always, and there is only one. And this rule is very simple: respond to injustice with more injustice without a second thought. That's why he decides that from now on, when he needs to take someone's life, it will be only at that moment, and immediately after, he closes his dimensional portal. Looking at his watch, he sees it is already 4:30 in the afternoon and laments the lost time. The guy thinks that going to the pesticide store was a good idea, but the zombies are getting in the way. Using his weapon scope, he sees that inside the place, there are survivors fighting among themselves. Suddenly, one of the guys gets angry with the situation and shoots an arrow, breaking the window. The guy in the red hoodie tells they get out a group to get out there while he asks nicely, but the leader of the other group calls him an idiot and asks what he just said. The one in red then threatens him, but the other guy just laughs and doubts he has the guts. The guy in red says they picked the wrong person to provoke and prepares himself. He shoots, saying that his specialty in the game was hitting other players. The arrow hits the other leader's shoulder, who screams in pain from the impact of the attack. His friends are shocked and ask if the archer has gone completely crazy. The archer and his girlfriend say that this is the apocalypse, and the law of the strongest prevails. The one in red then threatens them, and the injured leader decides it's better for them to leave. As they leave, the archer says it would have been better if they had left earlier. The guy is relieved, but suddenly he hears a scream coming from the group that just left. The injured leader shouts that he warned them about the zombies, and that now they are trapped outside. As a farewell gift, he throws a baseball bat at the window to break it. The noise attracts the zombies' attention, and the archer calls him crazy for shouting. Our protagonist observes through his binoculars the group fleeing desperately from the zombies on the street. He is impressed by the scene, thinking that guy gave him a rare spectacle. Taiga thinks that if he meets that guy again, he will need to give him something as a reward. With that, he wonders if his item collection is finally over and looks at the portal. Our protagonist checks his watch and sees that he still has over an hour available. He thinks that in moments like this, he needs the help of his partner Dingo. With that, he decides to change the order of the plan and says that now it's his partner's turn. The narration then asks a question about where zombies gather the most at the beginning, and the answer is in places where nutrients can be easily consumed. That is, their favorite places are large supermarkets full of food. That's why these places are the ones you should avoid the most at the beginning of the apocalypse. But for players with over 1,000 hours of gameplay, the thinking is very different because unlike the game, in real life, he is well prepared for what is to come. Our protagonist then sees this as a great chance to level up quickly and the golden opportunity to reach level 10 and open the shop before the tutorial. But after finishing everything, he feels a shock of reality with what he is about to do. He wonders if it is a waste because the floor would get soaked in oil anyway, but thinking calmly, he realizes that deep down, it's not such a big loss. And since he has time until the tutorial, he thinks it will be a good experience for Dingo. Our protagonist then asks Dingo if he can do what they practiced. With everything ready, he prepares to finally put his new plan into action. He gives the signal, and Dingo runs at high speed into the supermarket. Arriving there, he barks loudly to get the attention of the zombies who were eating. The creatures then notice the pup's presence and growl, ready to attack. Fearlessly, Dingo charges and uses his paws to knock down the zombies that get in his way. The pup then jumps and hits two more creatures, who scream from the unexpected blow. He continues fighting, dodging the creatures' attacks with his wolf-like agility. After passing them all, he finally reaches the exit with the zombies hot on his heels. With that, he manages to lure the horde of zombies out of the large supermarket. Taiga observes the scene and is impressed by the majestic figure of his partner. As expected, he lights his lighter and prepares for the next part of the plan. He then throws the lighter on the ground while Dingo jumps over his arm. The lighter ignites the oil on the ground, and the zombies are confused by the sudden fire. Our protagonist praises his partner and calls him a genius for the perfect execution. A gigantic explosion then occurs and takes out all the zombies at once. He levels up to level 11, gains 116 points, and a dimensional slot. It was almost night, and our protagonist finally finished his supply collection. He looted the supermarket and even took some computers from an apartment building. Knowing that the buildings would soon collapse, he hurried to leave that area. With that, our protagonist opens a dimensional portal in the middle of the street and locks the coordinates. He crosses over to the other world with his motorcycle, which has already served its purpose. Arriving at his hideout, he changes his equipment to one that has no metal. In his training ground, 1 kilometer from the shelter, he prepares for the next step. Our hero then takes his pre-set equipment and finishes preparing for the worst. Taiga wonders if his appearance is okay because there are no zippers or metal buckles. Looking at his watch, he realizes that now there are only 3 minutes left for the event. Suddenly, a strange feeling of discomfort takes over our protagonist. The system then confirms that the portal only allows his entry and that of his possessions. He confirms that the zombie spores and the wire disease spread through the wind. The zombie spores are extremely harmful to humans and turn them into monsters, but the metal wire disease destroys objects, so he couldn't let his guard down. That's why he is in the training ground, surrounded by wood to protect himself. Our protagonist thinks there is no point in worrying now and prepares for the worst. If his equipment breaks, he just needs to run to minimize the damage he suffers. Now he just needs to focus on one single thing, which is the most important. With that, our hero opens his portal and focuses entirely on keeping it stable. The countdown begins, and at 6 in the evening, the wire disease finally arrives. The plague then lands in Korea and begins to distort the entire city at once. In the game, this terrible plague was known to all as the Metal Plague. This infectious disease destroyed all the civilization that humanity had built. It dragged everything back to dust in the blink of an eye, leaving nothing behind. Not even the electrical systems escaped, and everything was destroyed by the Metal Plague. Through the portal, Taiga sees the destruction spreading through the real world outside. In the middle of the ruins, the portal stands out as a window to another, safe world. The city was taken back to the Stone Age. In just a few seconds of chaos, our protagonist prepared for this, but is still shocked by the scene. Suddenly, a gigantic explosion occurs, and our hero is thrown back by the impact. He wonders if the explosion was caused by the army's ammunition depot nearby, but he soon forgets this and worries about the iron beads he has in his hand. With a sigh of relief, our protagonist sees that the metal sphere is still intact. However, he soon realizes that the situation is not as good as he imagined before. Looking at the destroyed city through the portal, he knows he cannot call this a good thing. Not knowing what to do, the guy decides to close the dimensional portal for now. Now the only thing he can do is follow his plan and prepare for the future, and it was with this thought that he walked back to his shelter, very worried. Arriving there, he finds the little creatures from before, who seem to be waiting for him. Taiga then asks why they came back, and the creatures offer roots to the guy. Our hero is confused and questions why they are suddenly giving him a root. He asks if this is an apology gift, and the little creatures nod in agreement, or if they want to trade the roots for more of that sweet potato jelly they ate. At that, Taiga gets annoyed and says he tried to be nice, but they are already crossing the line. But upon closer inspection, he realizes that the little creatures are actually quite cute. Our protagonist decides to propose a deal to the little creatures. He explains that he doesn't need food, but rather strange and very special things. Our hero then sighs and realizes that maybe they don't understand what he means. Taiga laments that no matter how smart they are, it is impossible to have a conversation with them. Suddenly, the little red creature picks up a branch with something black on the tip and raises it. Our protagonist is shocked and asks if they want to trade ore for the jelly. The creature then draws a trade on the ground and confirms our hero's proposal. With an excited smile, he says that if they bring things like that, the deal is on, but the little creature gets scared, and our hero apologizes for being a bit hasty. The leader then talks to his group, and they seem to be discussing the guy's proposal. The red creature points at him, and our protagonist understands this as an agreement. The system informs him that he has communicated with the swarm, and that the chief requests a contract. Taiga is confused because with Dingo and the frog, he didn't need any contract before. He wonders if intelligent animals cannot be possessed, and the system confirms. Our protagonist finds the contract strangely formal, but it is very simple. Since he has nothing to lose, he signs, and the system confirms that the swarm is his possession. Suddenly, the leader climbs onto his shoulder, and our hero is confused by the situation. He realizes that the creatures are already going to look for the ores from the contract, but before they leave, our protagonist asks them to wait a bit. The guy remembers that they came there because they were hungry and gets the sweet potato jellies. He offers the food as a signing bonus for the contract. The creatures then take the food and celebrate the agreement with our protagonist. As they leave, our hero warns them not to eat it and run away without bringing anything back. He says that if they betray him, he will ignore the apocalypse just to hunt them down forever.